Is it is 6:41. We're going to go to get started. We're going to have some people who are going to show up a little bit late. We'll deal with that. Does anybody have a copy of the agenda? I don't think I ever saw one.
There was one that was sent.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
There's items not on the agenda.
make just
Public comment.
just sneaks with like roll call and
Yeah.
budget?
Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to ask for roll call.
Councilmember Hill. Councilmember Lewison.
Here.
Councilmember Leon.
Here.
Councilmember Virginie.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Green.
Here.
Councilmember Green.
Present.
Mayor Labby.
Here. Thank you very much. Is there anything on this agenda that we need to change? This is a work session. Pardon me? Do we have extra copies of the agenda?
I think it just indicates that we're gonna have a budget work session. That's it.
It's public comments on the agenda and then work session.
Right. Anybody have anything they'd like to add in the work session? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Any housekeeping matters anybody like to discuss before we get started?
Mayor.
Please.
We did receive a couple of emails recently. One from Shannon Borrego, I believe, stating that it was a very interesting email, very short to the point, saying, wow, our streets are in terrible shape with all this new equipment. So I did see today, for example, the county plow trucks cleaning out all the, I know we didn't have much, but our streets haven't really been swept or anything like that. I know there's not that much snow, but it's already starting to become ice packed. So I think that was in response to the conditions of the streets right now in the city of Leadville. Just stating that out loud.
Okay,
I know I spoke to our streets manager, Tony Medina, today, and they in fact were next to Sharon's house and working near her street. And so I know that she had her opportunity to express her opinions to the streets department personally. I think that they were very polite in response to her comments. But we do get concerns from Ms. Borrego every year, as soon as the snow happens. So we are addressing that, and I know the streets department was out this morning at 4 a.m. and plowing, and I saw them plowing. They are going to be out again this evening. So
Wonderful.
yep. They had a long day today. They were pooped.
And I did receive the street department flyer.
oh, good.
That's very well done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other housekeeping matters? Okay, this time, is there anybody here who would like to speak to city council from the public? If so, please introduce yourself and you'll have 3 minutes to speak to city council.
Kayla Marcelo, Lakewood Commissioner. For whatever it's worth, we went to lunch at the senior center today, and the streets were the hot topic in the city. They weren't plowed, they weren't acceptable, all the things that were said, but we got that feedback for about an hour at the senior center. For whatever that's worth.
As you drove around the city, was that your impression as well?
I didn't go anywhere except the senior center today, so.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
I think it's one of those snow boots, right?
Yeah, no, just one of those personal thoughts.
That you have to, I mean, I think one of those snow boots, it's like, is that enough to really go all for plowing? It's like, yeah, so I don't know, a little sympathy for that.
Yeah.
But they did. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, they went out at 4, so not quite sure what that's about. Okay, thank you.
We gave them your contact info.
They have it.
Home phone.
Interestingly, sorry, the city and county both do something each year. We get a list from the senior center of people who would like to have extra care in terms of plowing. I always turn over the county ones to Michael. He's perfectly good with that. And so that's part of the service that we supply to seniors. So,
Yeah, and we reminded them that we'll check in and. So,
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else in public who would like to make comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, thanks very much. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I put up a rough list of things that we need to get through tonight. Some of them will be fairly easy, some of them not as easy. I would like to start with, we talked about possibly doing something I call a Give Day, which is next Tuesday, and I have the same list I passed out before. What I'd like to know from city council members, is there any particular charity that they would like to focus on? Last year we did.
There's stickers for this exercise.
Put a little sticker. No, you can just. The sticker.
Bingo marker.
Yes.
But, I've highlighted, I think, the 10 that we gave to last year. I'm not set on that, but I just would like to know, do we still want to do like $200 each? And are there any in particular that you have as favorites?
Kind of a biased fan of Bill's generation, but I don't know.
Okay,
I should also recuse myself from that
no, you should,
decision.
you should not.
I'll pick it up for you then.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pick it up. I think personally also Full Circle and Cloud City Conservation Center.
Okay, those are on the list,
Oh,
so that's great. And we have so many fabulous nonprofits in town. Yeah, please.
Like, I love the Tabor Opera House, but we are already fun. That's, I don't think we need to.
That's an awfully good point, since we were talking about one of the quick decisions we hope to make tonight in terms of their funding request and what we have put in the budget for them. So I'm going to take that advisement, but maybe that's not appropriate. What else?
I would advocate for the National Mining Hall of Fame and Museum.
Okay. Got it.
We get extra stars if you say something, you're gonna give them more money, is that how it works?
See,
Yeah.
that's how I thought it worked too.
Yes, that's okay with me.
And the Judge Floyd is a big advocate for Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood. Okay, good.
Well, and
No, I was just saying Judge Floyd clapped.
Oh, good. I mean, one of my favorites is St. George's.
Yes, so.
I agree. I also think Friends of Twin Lakes does an absolutely exceptional job.
That's a really good point.
They do a great job of preservation down there.
Okay. Who else is
Yeah,
on
we
your
have-
radar? Pardon?
How many have been listed?
You've listed 7 so far.
Well, right
I
now,
think we've added.
I
some.
have the ones I had highlighted that we did last year: Advocates of Lake County, Cloud City Conservation Center. I have Cloud City Wheelers. I think we gave them some last year. Full Circle, Get Outdoors Leadville, Build a Generation, Lake County Community Fund, St. George's, Project Dream, Planned Parenthood, National Mining Hall of Fame, and Friends of Twin Lakes. That's what I have listed so far. That sound okay to everybody? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. If you look at that list, in terms of what we're talking about, just an update on Dr. Zwerdlinger. We had to, finally make some sort of a decision that was, we couldn't figure out a good way to do that. So what we did is just say, we'll pay 50% of anybody who wants to participate in that program. Thus far, and Monday is the deadline that we've set for giving us input. We've had no takers. And we've had some people say that they're not interested, so we'll see what happens. It could be nobody takes it or very few. We'll report back.
I thought that we had been considering using her practice for like all the physicals. She has done all the fire physicals. That's
Actually, that didn't come up. That is separate, but we have done that in the past. I don't have any problem with that.
That hadn't come up as far as, so her proposal had just been for the. Right, so she had made a request to meet with the mayor and I to propose the idea, and so she met with us, and then we had a staff meeting where we presented a flyer with her proposal for her practice, but we hadn't.
We didn't talk about the physicals. I think I have no problem continuing using her for physicals,
just wondered, because I
but that hadn't come
seemed
up.
like this was a.
Gotcha, right. Okay,
So do I,
just big old check mark. The COLA, the numbers that you're looking at are reductions from 4%, from 5% to 4%. The reason is, I think that we maybe went a little bit far with 5%, partially because most employees got 5% in July. We copied the county, did 5% and 4% in July, but the vast majority of our employees were at the 5% level, so we felt like 4% was probably more appropriate in this budget.
and not to put the county on the spot, but the last budget work session we had, you are all considering 4/5% as well.
I think we're going with the 4. What it sounds like the recommendation is for us.
That's what we decided. So the budget we're gonna be looking at tonight will be 4% plus 2.75%. Because we had to plug in what we thought was gonna be an overall average after reviews are done, but they're still in process right now. So it's 6.75% is what the budget is gonna show. Remember, the budget is always an educated guess as to what we think is going to happen. Cabling is in the budget.
Wait, hold on, Mayor, I do have a question.
Yes, please.
Are we gonna take a deeper dive into
Yeah.
these numbers?
Absolutely. We'll be discussing, employee pay if you want to. Yes, I'm just trying to go over some of the things that we can get out of the way quickly. Cabling, we put $50,000 in the budget for City Hall repairs and maintenance, and that cabling is included in that $50,000. So it's not a separate line item, just so.
That's why the city hall maintenance went up by about 20K.
Well, and I think Tracy wanted us to raise the City Hall maintenance budget anyway. Partially because one of the thoughts was that we should consider redoing redoing the desks that are fiberboard were put together in the police department.
That, and I think we left more money, we took a hard look at city hall maintenance because it is a big number. We took a hard look at it and we did leave some additional money in it because our boiler has gone out twice so far this year.
It's been a battle.
And we've been without, and the mayor has done a lot of the legwork, but we've been without heat. One day we actually had to send everybody home because we were without heat. So that could be a big ticket item, and it's. I mean, we're certainly resilient to some extent, but there are people who need to work here in the building. I mean, the police department needs to work here in the building. There are some things we can't do remotely. So we opted to leave a little money in there in case the boiler goes completely kaput.
So is it one boiler for the whole building? Is it one furnace? Is it?
Yes,
One boiler, one
It's
boiler for.
it's one furnace that drives the boiler system.
Isn't
Yes,
it?
Seriously, that's,
it's about the size of this table.
I don't
So
doubt that
tall.
if it's one for the entire building. And it's gonna be a pain to replace. Fine.
Okay. So the cabling is included. Street department, they had asked for a service truck. We didn't consider it in this budget.
So we're paying that off.
Yeah, it was You know, our department's really kind of bought into the thought process. We're really focusing on people this year, not equipment. And we've really focused on equipment in the past and done a good job of that. So cabling is handled.
Well, can we let's just,
Okay.
one point on the cabling, the reason we need to recable is the effort for cybersecurity. We cannot actually. Donna, can you help me remember what, we can't actually transition. To some of the recommended measures for cybersecurity without upgrading our cabling within the building, that's the bottom line. So it's not just that we like new cabling, it's that we actually cannot do critical, essentially, put anything on the cloud without upgrading our cabling.
Also, we've had some cabling failures
Yes,
for our internet and we've had to do some repairs. So this bid is for Cat 6 cabling throughout the building. Okay, in terms of the COLA, we've already discussed that. Next up, you know, let's look at the Tabor Opera House. They have a request. If you look at your budget, you'll see that the request is for 150. What we've done is we put 140 in the budget and then 10,000 against
yeah.
CTF funds.
And I know that was a question we had for the table. It makes it a little harder for them with the. How they can spend the CPF money, because the CPF money does have limitations on what you could spend it on, but we thought that. 10,000 was reasonable. We also felt like it was a pretty good number for purposes of keeping the conservation trust fund balance. And we can see how that goes. I think if it's too much and too difficult for them for next year, we can reevaluate the balance, but. We do have that money. That's the lottery money that we get.
Does anybody have any thoughts on the Tabor Opera House funding?
Do you have what's the line item on that, the number? I found it on my computer, but now my computer is like.
46,653.
Oh, yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, the Tabor Opera House belongs to us and the city, and its success is, highly dependent on our support of it. I think the board does a fabulous job and delivers, some very clear financial breakdowns of where their money comes from and what they do with it. So it's not, I don't feel like we're just kind of pouring this into a black box. Although it is something of a money pit, but we knew that going into it. So I feel comfortable funding their request as it stands.
I would agree.
I'm looking forward to when they start making. Actual.
Should you live so long?
I think they will. I think they will.
I hope you're right. I think that obviously they still have a long ways to go in restoration next
Oh, yeah.
year. Next year, they do the 4th wall. And then once they're done with that, with the envelope, then they can start fundraising for restoration of the inside. That's going to be a big deal. I will say that last year, we made a pretty bold move to increase our funding of the Tabor Opera House so that they could hire a director. I think they made a great choice. I think it's going to make a difference. You know, already
Already made a difference, I think.
it feels like it to me.
There's one right there.
Yeah.
So I
Alright.
guess
We're okay with that thing.
well, that's one thing I want to make sure we have consensus on. So I heard fund the full request, and taking some notes here, fund the full request. Councilmember Green, Councilmember Luna Leal, I guess. We all don't have to say yes, but if there's anybody who doesn't want to fund the full request.
This is the 140 to them directly in the 10.
Correct.
Yeah.
So consensus,
It would appear that we have consensus. Thank you.
Is this gonna be a request that continues throughout the years?
I don't know, but I would guess yes. I don't know the answer to that because I don't know what kind of fundraising Sarah is going to be able to implement. In her second year, she wasn't even a full year this year.
But I think the nice thing this year is that we've actually made it a line item in the budget, so it's not just sort of this contingency fund request that we manage every year. And
I think also we have to consider the amount of leverage they have. I mean, they have tremendous amount of leverage with the funding that we give them, so to continue to do so is it's beneficial.
And I think I'm probably gonna mistake this, but Sarah has some pretty ambitious goals for her own grant and fundraising and in the millions of dollars that she's gonna attempt to raise, so.
So it'd be great if it's not a yearly request, but we'll, yes. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have two line items. We have Main Street and EDC. Main Street we requested from 36 to 50. And we included an additional 10 in there because of the flower watering program that we ended up, paid for last year. We'd like for that to be part of their program.
I think, so you're talking Main Street, but
Mhm.
this has been Mayor and I have had a lot of meetings over the last 2 weeks. Because of, the EDC staff resignations, the real question has been, is Main Street still going to exist? And the answer is that we really do want Main Street to still exist. Main Street is separate from the Leadville Lake County Economic Development Corporation, and so that will require some transitioning, but the funding request, Nancy's funding request is the same. And we had a meeting with the Dola Main Street program, and they are willing to help us bring Main Street back in-house so Main Street can continue to exist. And so the funding request for Main Street is the same, with the idea that it would come back in as a city program.
I think the most important thing to me is as a big fan of the Main Street program, and I am. We just need to stabilize the thing. I mean, we bounced it around a bit in good faith because we had changes and, at one time we had Destiny who was our Main Street program manager, and then Bethany took it over. And she was both city clerk and Main Street. Then Sarah Day ran it for a while. Then we had Chad here for a while, and he ran it. And about the time he was going to leave, we were looking at the fact that Nancy was part-time with the EDC, and that might be a very good, and she was already helping with Main Street. We thought that would be a good move, and actually it worked out quite well this year. I mean, Main Street was they really did an exceptional job for our downtown this year.
I wasn't entirely clear based on their presentation, because this is like a 40% increase over what they had last year. And I wasn't entirely clear based on their presentation, like what would that money go for? What would
They did give us a budget. I don't have it in front of me.
they did, but it was really hard to parse. I guess I'm used to Donna's budgets, which are so easy to look at. And they had all these bar graphs that I guess I just question the amount of the increase, because as I recall from their budget, their expenditures last year did not exceed their revenues. And so if they want 40% more, what are the specific programs that they're going to spend that on?
Right. I mean, I know that in their budget this year, last year we funded the music in the park separately as a separate request, and this year it's in their budget.
I did see that.
And also, of course, the flower program.
I mean, the flower program nets them a few $100.
I don't think it did last year, but yes, you're right. It should hopefully break even. That's just.
But that's not including the watering.
The water has been separate.
$10,000 for water?
It's a 16 weeks, so yeah, they have to water like 3 times a week. So yeah, it's really expensive. And we've used contractors to do it.
15 years ago, I did it for $3,000.
How many years ago?
Oh, 15.
Like 3,000. Somebody could do the quick math on me.
That sounds about right.
Mhm.
Well, I'll just throw in my 2 cents concerning EDC and Main Street program is in flux. And I'm looking at them both. I prefer not, especially EDC, until we figure out the stability. I don't feel comfortable increasing my budget up from 37 to 45. And if the Main Street program does take an additional, same thing with the Main Street program. I do agree with the Main Street program and its importance. If there was a need for $10,000 for the watering program, I prefer adding $10,000 to the 36 instead of 60 to make it $46,000. As both programs are currently in flux, and like if they were here to defend themselves, like the EDC is ultimately dissolved. Main Street is part of the EDC right now, and I don't know why French County would add funding to something that we are building.
Keep a couple of things in mind. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was, maybe you know the answer to this, but since the staff resigned at the EDC, those were also the people who ran Main Street. Are they still the staff at Main Street, or because Main Street is part of the EDC? Does Main Street is also unstaffed right now, or how does all that?
The answer is, I mean, it's a great question. Here's what we'd like to see happen, because Nancy was the main person at Main Street. She's the one who made it happen, and she was also through EDC, and they had a couple different staff people, and one of those is moving out of town, and the other one is taking another job. And so there's only Nancy left, but that's okay. Our hopeful intent is to make Nancy our Main Street coordinator again, because she has been enormously successful. And you'll notice in the line item for economic development, it's not an EDC line item. It's an economic development line item. And that's might sound like it's parsing words, but it's really not, because if we want to have, you know how hard it is to have a part-time person do much of anything in our community. So our intent then would be to bring Nancy in and have her, run Main Street, and then also have enough money in there to pay her. And she could also do some economic development. That would be minor, comparatively. But I think that's something that Lori has been.
Well,
keen on.
I wouldn't say it's more, I would say it would be a good portion of that position, so then, yeah.
Setting aside Main Street, which again, if we're down to one individual, I would say that I'm not interested in increasing their budget by 40%. I do feel comfortable as that program moves back into the city and as that individual kind of settles in and gets a new fresh look on what the financial needs are, returning for a supplement. I would be more comfortable with that. As far as economic development, 2 years ago, we gave the EDC, which is economic development, $24,000. They came back last year and they said, we need an increase to $3,750 because we need to really increase the salary that we're offering in order to attract an executive director after Marla left. They didn't do that. They hired Nancy, who, I'll just leave my opinions about that aside, but they didn't use the money to attract the executive director as they told us they needed it for. They spent that money on other things. They hired some other staff and they've done some other projects, but I'm personally really uncomfortable with an outside private nonprofit
who I think needs to be responsible, much as we are with grants and reporting, in using money that in a different way than what they told us they were going to use it for, and never really justifying that. This year, their request is another 20% increase. Looking at the budget that they had presented before, most of that increase was going to go into salary increases. They had a lower percentage going into business support. They had a lower percentage going into administrative stuff. The only thing that was slightly higher was projects, and that was marginally higher, but by far the biggest increase was in salaries. They don't have those salaries anymore. So as far as the EDC, I think we offer them what we gave them last year, 37,500. And if they reconstitute themselves and come up with a new plan for what they want to use money for, they can come back to us and ask for a supplement. I do think economic development is important. I didn't agree with their primary focus on business retention and expansion. They told us they didn't have enough staff or energy to do work to attract outside businesses, and this does, business retention certainly benefits the city, but it's a bigger benefit to the city than the county. And I think as a result of that, the lack of a benefit to the county has soured some of those relationships. So I think the EDC needs to reinvent itself. I don't think setting aside extra money in the city budget for quote economical development, again, show me your plan. I don't even know what that means. But I'm not interested in giving the EDC an additional 20% increase. That was primarily going to go to salaries when they no longer have those salaries.
Okay, thank you. Tim, I'd like to hear, as a member of the EDC board, where you are on this.
Do I still have to be a member of the board?
I don't know.
I did two of them are meeting this evening, or EDC.
Yeah, I had to work, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. We'll catch you up. I think the EDC isn't at a point where there's opportunity for the EDC to maybe take a reset, reinvent itself, look at what the priorities are, and move forward. As far as the county goes, we're not considering a contribution for whatever that's worth to you all.
Thank you. Appreciate that insight.
Can I clarify a contribution to the Leadville County Economic Development
Yes.
Corporation? Are you doing any economic development?
So I think what we talked about briefly is that, and in our last work session, which was supposed to be with the EDC board, but it ended up just being the three of us, that there were some different paths that we could take. So
Shared that list with you, that one that I came from public, like very draft list of projects or studies.
Yeah.
And things that we thought were very much tied to. Kind of that economic development that's clearly outlined in our comp plans and that the county had been requesting from the EDC over the last few years.
Okay. Thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, and Kayla, please correct me if I'm wrong, but our understanding is that the EDC's current fund balance is more than enough a year of operating expenses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also informing our decision on.
Okay.
to Contribute. in
Yeah, I think
23,
that there's funding available for the EDC to survive if it chooses to go down that path. The board has a lot of work to do in the next couple months to kind of do a reset. But that's kind of where we're at right now.
Do you think there's the will to do that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
All right. Good.
So I think that there's opportunity too for us to talk internally, after our meeting this evening with the EDC. Or the EDC board meeting, for the county, maybe to be a member, but not at the magnitude that we.
Gotcha. Thank you. Sam, please.
With that consideration that the county's not making the contribution. I would see a contribution from us directly to the EDC kind of being futile.
I agree, but that's, if you look at the line item, it doesn't say that.
I understand that.
So I
You
guess my
want-
question is, what is that money going to then?
It would
or not.
go, it would go to, I'm sorry, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is because the staff just quit recently. We needed to meet quickly to figure out, what the plan is to ask Nancy to tell us, put together a plan to tell us what it would look like to save Main Street, because I think for us to save Main Street, we need a Main Street program director. And I think that Nancy's done a fantastic job with that. So the concept that we want her to get us a proposal on is what would it take and what is her proposal for combining the Main Street program, her being a full-time employee and running the Main Street program and doing economic development for the city. And what are those roles? But I have some very clear ideas what I would like to see for the city for economic development beyond the Main Street program. I think it needs to be two things. I think the Main Street program doesn't justify a full-time position. So I guess what our concern is in this discussion, how do we maintain the Main Street program with the director? And our idea was to combine it with economic development and then fund that. Now, your question is the right question, which is we need to decide on a budget before we're gonna get a proposal for, and what the roles and responsibilities are, what the budget is, what, you know, what that looks like. So what we have said is, okay, we're gonna leave it as is for discussion this evening and see what the discussion this evening is. It was not possible for Nancy to pull together the proposal with a budget and roles and responsibilities by this evening. So I think your idea potentially is, you know, to say have the, once there's a proposal in place, you know, have them come back with a supplement, if that's the preferred way to go. I think the idea, I guess we'd like to get an idea if people think there's consensus around keeping Main Street and combining with economic development and as a concept.
I think that,
Well, so
sorry,
Now,
Council.
I'm just gonna make my, I don't think it's the right concept. That's me personally. I would also say this is, just to go back to the EDC. Is if they have enough in their coffers for over an entire year. I don't really feel that with everything that we have to do internally for the city, which is a lot, we're talking about a lot of things. Something that I put down, survey 9K, right? I don't know why we're gonna add to their coffers, if you will, for something that they could fully fund for the next year. With extras in there. That said too, so I don't know, but with that new information, I'm wondering if we should fund the EDC.
Well,
I'm advocate for.
what
economic-
Laura is saying is we should not fund the EDC. We should combine these two and fund a
Right.
person. And that, to me, the most important part of that, the most important part to Lori is some possible economic development around things that the city could really use. You know, and you can talk about that. The most important thing to me is stabilize Main Street for years to come, I hope.
Okay,
So-
and go ahead, Christian.
Christian,
I wanna
yes,
hear
please.
it.
I guess my conflict with that is that, I mean, the EDC went under for multiple reasons, I'm sure, but it just feels like. Maybe a new direction, if that's something that Nancy can provide, that's great, but I kind of agree with Dana's point that we kind of need at some point a new direction that it needs to take to kind of. Incentivize it to grow, not only from the city's perspective, so it can keep happening, but just in general in our community. So I think that my worry is in combining that, would we be already jeopardizing? I just don't know if Nancy's open to the idea of changing the approach. If I knew that, I would feel more comfortable.
All right,
For
but
example.
I also want to hear from Tim, because I haven't heard from him yet, and Shannon and Tracy.
Well, I personally like the direction that the EDC was going in. With business retention and strengthening local workforce, so I think they brought up a good point. When you're trying to attract someone from the outside, you have no place for them to live. So, and that's a tough sell. As far as the concept of investing in economic development for the city specifically, I like that idea. You know, that's something that we can have some control over, and, you know, as far as the direction we go in. But I would like to see a plan.
I would like to say to that point before I get to Shannon and Tracy. I would agree with that, and in budgets, in this case, the budget would be a placeholder. I would be in favor of leaving both of those proposed numbers in place as a placeholder. And if we don't use them, we don't use them, but we have to have something in order to entertain a proposal, and to Christian's point, a proposal that tells us, is that person willing to rethink what economic development for the city means, as opposed to what it meant to the EDC? And those could very well be two different things. And the other thing I would say is, I think that person was going in too many different directions. And so I think a little closer management of that could be helpful along what you were saying. Shannon.
My concern, I don't know all of the gory details of what happened at the EDC, and I don't know that I need to. Other than it seems like we're trying to wrap a budget around a person, and that doesn't feel right. What you're saying is, let's find a budget so we can have Nancy, and that doesn't feel right. That's not the way it works.
Except that she is the primary person that made Main Street so successful this summer. Main Street did things this summer they'd never done before. You know, they got help get the grant for the revitalization of the facade at the Herald Democrat.
I guess to Councilmember Grant's point, I think it's an important person, but even if Nancy decides this isn't the right fit for her, or for whatever reason that doesn't work out, I don't think we can keep Main Street. So the city has been through this a couple iterations of this, where somebody took it on as collateral duties or part-time duties, didn't work. So my problem, and I think that just looking long-term, is if we're making Main Street some type of like collateral duty part-time position, I think it will not succeed. I think we have seen how hard it is to hire full-time people at a really good salary, and that's been difficult. So I think even if it's not Nancy, if she doesn't decide this is working for her, the city decides it isn't working for us, to hire someone to do it, I think we would benefit from having a full-time person doing the Main Street program. I don't think that's a full-time job, and doing economic development specifically for the city being part of the job description. So I think regardless of who it is, I think it requires a full-time position.
I'd like to hear from Tracy.
Yeah, sorry for no video, but I have a really poor connection. This is very confusing because I think the EDC is super important for both the county and the city. But as we're saying, we have no plan, we have no person. So it's a little hard to budget for that. I'm okay with the mayor's suggestion, because I do think we need somebody to be doing Main Street and economic development while we work out how the EDC is going to go forward.
Thank you, Tracy. We have
So to that point, I guess to like finalize the numbers, because I don't necessarily disagree that we do need someone to kind of stabilize Main Street. Obviously, it's not going to be a full-time job, and it'd be hard to hire someone part-time. It just how much of this actually makes sense for EDC portion of it? If their coffers are already full, why can't they use that part of the budget to supplement the payroll of it to then, you know, if they say stabilize and in a year or before the year are good, as Dana mentioned, just make a request to us, and us being understanding of the situation, just take that into account into the following year. I guess I don't see the need for the increases if there's potential for the coffers to be used to supplement some of the employees' wages. And if something comes out of it and it blows off, blows up in a good way, and we just start running, we can just supplement it in a request.
The real problem with that is that we are, so the Leadville Lake County EDC is a separate entity, legal entity, and so their funds are their funds. So to supplement, their board would have to decide to spend the money that way. And should they decide to do something different with the money, then that's their decision. So I guess what I'm saying is we couldn't. count
We
on
wouldn't,
that.
yeah, we wouldn't have the control of knowing if they're gonna go through. Okay.
I would say this, and excuse me a second. Tonight, all we have to do is decide on the budget. We don't have to decide on precisely who it's gonna be or what their budget is gonna look like. We just have to decide on a placeholder while we get to that point. So I'm sorry, yes,
No.
Dave.
So. Main Street is important. I totally agree with. Funding it, maybe, I don't know how I feel about the 60,000, but. Funding it and taking it back within the city. I think Nancy has done a fabulous job with Main Street in the past. I would anticipate she continue to do a fabulous job. My concerns about earmarking money for economic development are twofold. One is, I'll just be plain, I don't think Nancy's the right person for that. I think she was over her head at the EDC with it, and I don't think that she is the right person to turn to for an economic development plan for the city. My second concern is that if, like Commissioner Marcella says, the will is in the EDC to reconstitute itself. I was really impressed with the goals and the work that was done at the retreat. I think there's a lot of potential there. If we start setting aside and planning for city economic development, are we going to end up reinventing the wheel, having a time when the EDC comes back and is making their own request for support, and we have this separate city economic development thing? Like how are those going to integrate? So I think, like, I don't think that it belongs in our budget at this point, because it is this nebulous idea that still remains to be discussed. But just like we had the Tabor Opera House originally in our contingency, and then we're like, hey, like this is going to turn into a multi-year commitment, let's move it into a line item. I would rather see this develop that way if it comes to that. But personally, I am not in favor of setting aside a city economic development fund, and furthermore, setting aside $45,000.
So give me some clarity. Are you thinking we instead of putting money in economic development, maybe we put money in contingent fund? And that way we have flexibility as to ultimately how we use it. Is that what you're thinking?
And we have some more information rather than just.
Okay, well, again, the budget's going to be a placeholder. So I don't disagree with you. That's a kind of an interesting idea, but it's a placeholder. It is not a commitment necessarily. In that ultimately the commitment is we don't have to spend the money.
Here's the thing is, it's a line item in the budget, then that can just kind of go on and take on a life of its own, and we will be none the wiser. But we are the fiscal agents of the city, and I'm not comfortable with that as it stands right now. If it were in the contingency, it would have to come through us to review before we committed funds.
No,
If this is a proposal that Dana is proposing,
yeah,
which is to remove the EDC dollars and put it into the contingency funds, I like that proposal and I support it. I'm not against economic
Okay.
development.
Got
I'm
it.
just saying that there is no plan. Why are we going to support a plan?
that's a very interesting suggestion. Tim, what do you think?
Not opposed to that idea.
Shannon?
I prefer that idea.
Good. Tracy?
Ari, what's the question?
Dana had suggested that rather than leave it in an economic development, can't even talk, line item, to move that into contingency as an earmark. And then we exercise control over that expenditure once the plan is presented to us.
The plan for the EDC?
a plan for a person who would be Main Street and possibly economic development. And I suppose it could, be for EDC also, but in light of what the county's told us and everything we know, that doesn't seem likely. It seems more likely to me, at least, based on what I know, that we would, look at a plan for a person that would handle Main Street and to flesh out that job, that they would do some economic development. That's how I see it.
I would like to see this, though. I don't think we should bake in.
Wait, I'm still talking.
Councilmember Gordon.
Oh, okay. Yes, Tracy.
Sorry, Max. Thank you. I would be fine with that as long as it was fully funded as presented in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just?
Well, when I hear from Max first, and then I'm sorry, I will call
Well, I just want to say that I heard you say it would be Main Street / economic development, and I'm saying Main Street and not economic development.
him. Right.
Is that what I heard you say? Like,
No, you didn't hear me say that, no.
yeah, because you said Main Street / economic
I did.
development. If we said that, I'm nervous that we're gonna reinvent the wheel, that the Lake County Economic Development.
That's why you would have to see a proposal and decide for yourself.
I would prefer, Mike, if it was a part-time job on Main Street, whoever that person is, considering all of the folks from the economic EDC resigned, has to go out to actually hiring. You can't just say you. I think you have to actually announce the position and see if there's somebody else, and if it's the candidate's the right candidate. And if it is the person that's done in the past, that's fantastic, because we know they've done a great job in the past. But I think that said, I know that we've talked before in the past, we don't have PR. I would prefer seeing somebody go to school to learn how to do press releases and help us out with our messaging and our Facebooking and our Twittering than economic development and Main Street.
I
That
think
was where
we're
you
getting
were
pretty
gonna get
far
there.
afield in terms
No,
of
I'm just saying,
the budget we're considering.
I'm just saying, I'm just telling you,
Okay.
I don't agree with your Main Street / economic
Okay.
development for the city.
Got it. Thank you.
And I don't think she does.
Commissioner Marcel would like to share.
Yeah, just as an executive committee member of the EDC, I just want to, as a point of clarification, the EDC has not folded and doesn't intend to fold at this point. And I just would like to remind the city that any information that comes to the city for any economic development activities from the Leadville Lake County EDC is proprietary information and needs to be released through us first.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, that was the whole discussion when way back, we said, why don't we bring the EDC inside the city? And it was because of like that.
The information in the interviews and the BRI is confidential. It can't be transferred from the EDC to you.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and to your point, I don't know that I don't ever remember us discussing bringing the city, but certainly the conversations have been, should it be in the county or should it be its own corporation? And there was a good debate, some years about that.
I think it was just a question I asked.
Okay. In that case, okay.
And therefore it was a discussion.
All right. Then it sounds to me like, in terms of funding, and we can take a straw poll, but we have funding for Main Street, and then a separate funding for economic development, which we will zero out and put that in the contingent line item for future consideration.
Okay.
Does that sound okay to everybody? Thank you very much.
Consensus? Okay.
Grudging consensus.
Are we talking also about the Main Street dollars, the amount for Main Street, or where the funding amount for Main Street?
I'm still in favor of the $60,000. I have been, because I know what it takes, and certainly if we decide it ends up being a part-time person plus all the different costs that are associated with that, I think it's a necessary number. That's my opinion. But I've been watching it closely all these years, and we've made do. And we're looking at a budget with a fairly significant surplus right now, so I'm not too worried about that number.
Yeah, but some of that surplus came from weird.
I'm sorry,
That's a quick question.
you can.
I just want to make sure, because Dana had mentioned 37,005 to EDC. Do we want to leave it at 45 or do we want?
That was,
That's the
that was the
discussion.
suggested number.
That's the discussion I think they're having right now.
Yeah, so that's another question. Do
Okay.
we, if we move this 45 to our operating contingency, are we just simply not sending funds to the E EDC?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
45 contingency.
And remember, whatever plan we decide on, that 45 is contingent. It's not dedicated to that. Nor would it have been if it was stated as an economic development line item. We don't have to spend all that.
I get it.
Okay,
Having monitored the operating contingency budget for years, I understand that.
all right. Thanks. Oh, yes, you have.
45 is fine if it's going to the contingency. I don't think it makes too big of a difference, even if we decide it's only 37.5 later on. Then we keep the rest in the contingency.
Right. It could be a decision-making process around, okay, what is the real need?
Yeah.
What is it gonna take to run this program?
Okay, so is that consensus on the 45,000 to contingency? Nodding?
Yes.
Okay. And then the, okay,
Positive affirmation.
you're not hitchhiking?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Then I guess the question then comes back to Donna's question, which is the Main Street, what is the Main Street funding?
My opinion is 60. I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks is the proper number.
Go 60.
Does that include everything in the 60? Is that the watering? Is that the
Yes.
music? Is that the
Yes,
Wages,
person, the
Yes.
signage?
yes. Yes, it does. There's nothing outside of that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yes. Tracy?
Thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Dana?
I still think it's too much,
Okay.
but
Thank you.
I'm willing to compromise on this because of the discussion on economic.
Thank you very much. And again, remember, at this point, I think we should take it seriously, but it is a placeholder.
Yeah.
Until we really get some sort of a definitive program.
And so I guess the other consensus we like, and I think this is implicit, but that we all believe that Main Street, the program should come back in-house.
Yes.
with that, are we going to announce a new job?
Well,
I think that's the next
I
thing.
would definitely check with Christiana first, but so that's a really good question. I think if there's at all a debate about it, then absolutely, we should just post it. But I would defer to Christiana. I don't want
Regardless of what we do, we need that proposal first. We need
to.
an outline of what it is we're trying to accomplish
For Main Street.
for Main Street and possibly both.
So you can publish a
Yes.
job list of jobs.
Well, it's not just that. We're not going to agree on, we have to agree on what that's going to be. And agree on a budget.
Can we just take Main Street back without talking around EDC about it? Can we just say it's ours?
Well, so this is what, we have a memorandum of understanding between the city, the county and the Economic Development Corporation. And it terminates at the end of this year. So we do have an agreement, but it will end. Anybody can terminate it with 90 days notice. So, I mean, that's silly because it'll just automatically terminate, but yes, we can take Main Street back at the end of the year.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, thank you. Good conversation. Any other?
No,
Thoughts?
just a reminder of any economic development activity that uses any information from the LLEDC is proprietary and confidential. And use of that information could have ramifications.
Thank you. Okay. The next up we have the family program. It's one of our favorite topics. Now, remember, we're not gonna, we can't actually make a decision on that until December 6th. Okay, we can't make a decision tonight. What we can do is have a conversation to try and prep ourselves for that. And the reason that I want to do that tonight is we have to put something in the budget.
Yeah.
You know, we have to have a budgetary placeholder for that program. Now, I would tell you in our conversation with the county, they opted out with no participation. And so last night I was at the school board meeting and they opted out. Sarah was there also, with no participation. And something interesting came about that because I didn't know that you also don't have to administer it. That the state does that. That you, if somebody wants to opt in, and when we opt out, they go to the state to opt in directly. So that was, I didn't realize that that was, you know, part of this or could be part of it. And so what we have discussed is, do we want to participate in their cost? And that was, so on the 6th, we have to decide we opting in or opting out. If we opt out, if we opt in, it doesn't matter. It's all, you know, all the costs and administration will have to be handled. But if we opt out, we have choices as to participation.
Well, I mean, participation is kind of how much of the employee's cost would we cover is the question.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So would we, you know, we heard some conversations that people would be in favor of covering 100%. We heard maybe 50%, we heard 0. Maybe the 0 came from me, I don't know. But so I want to hear just a conversation around the family program. And whether you're inclined to opt in or opt out. And if you're inclined to opt in, then everything, nothing else matters. If we opt out, then we have a decision to make.
And I guess the ultimate decision is what we're trying to figure out for tonight, because you are scheduled to take your formal vote on the family program. It's on the agenda for the 6th. But for purposes of getting through the budget tonight is how much money do we put in the budget for the family program? And I can pull up the numbers.
Is there a line item now?
Did you
Yes.
what did you put in the line item?
$14,000.
Which number?
665.
No?
6520.
Okay, I was like utilities. Okay,
Yeah. let's do it.
Now, the 14 is in there currently based on, that would be full participation, paying 100% of employee.
If we opt out.
If we opt out.
Yeah, if we opt out, yes. I'll tell you, and I've had this conversation with several people. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's one point I'd like to make that I
Yes,
don't
please.
think's been brought up yet. If you choose to opt into the program, you are committed for 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay, didn't realize that.
you can't, it's not an annual thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's every 3 years.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that 14,000 turns into. Well, if you opt in and you want to cover everybody, that's 28,000 times 3.
Max,
So,
Tim,
That's 10 on max.
I got your hats. So I have done a little talking with the CML, and I am changing my opinion this year to opt out. So let me tell you why. I know, right? Spin yourself there. So it turns out that one of the reasons, so this is a new program. It is something that came through legislation. Just gonna start to be implemented, and it is a program that
also contains fines for entities that opt in but don't process the payments correctly. One of, as it turns out, one of the main reasons that many municipalities are opting out is to protect themselves and wait and see how this thing shakes out. And I'm thinking about our accommodations tax situation where we also passed legislation. It was a great idea. Everybody moved forward and we got to the beginning and nobody knew how to process any of the payments. And it took several months of kind of frantically figuring things out. But this is now a program at the state level. And I think that the municipalities who have opted out as a for a time to see how things shake out and see if the system rolls out smoothly and not put themselves at risk for being penalized for like not doing something correctly is pretty rational. You can opt in at any time. And you're right. Once you opt in, you're opting in for 3 years. So I think for this year, it makes sense to opt out and observe what happens.
And if we opt out, pay the 100%.
I'd be in favor of that.
And I think we had consensus on that.
Yeah,
I've changed my mind on that, and the reason I have is I think offering employees a program free of charge that would give them 12 weeks fully paid leave is a management nightmare. Is asking for huge problems. Now, you could say, well, people wouldn't really take advantage of that, would they? And the answer is, I think some people, maybe not a lot, maybe only a few, would figure out a way. And from a management standpoint, I think it's a disaster waiting to happen.
I think it's the kind of America I want to live in though.
And I mean, more to the point, if they decide to take advantage of it and something happens and they're screwed, that's their own fault. Why do you take advantage of the system, you know? Like, I think that is like a false worry that, okay, fine, they abuse it. It's like punishing everyone else for the fact that, and I agree with Dana, given what she's presented, that it makes sense to opt out and pay 100%. Given that there is what sounds like could be a really big risk for us to opt in. But I just think that's like, it's just not the same. I don't think people would abuse it. And if they do abuse it, then they're going to get, in one time or another, it's going to come back and bite them in the butt, and it's going to hurt, and it's their own fault. And now, quite honestly, I just don't think it's really common for people to abuse it.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna raise that's a really good point. I worked in the federal government for a long time, and there's a lot of programs that exist. And it's not that they shouldn't exist. Sometimes there is abuse, but it doesn't justify eliminating the whole program. There's lots of employee protections, and sometimes they do get abused by people who file claims that are meritless or grievances that are meritless. But it doesn't, I from a very strong perspective, from the management perspective, was it doesn't mean we eliminate the grievance system. If that's not, that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I think the mayor's right there. There's potential that there would be abuse, but I don't think it means that there shouldn't be a system.
But regardless, if we opt out, it never stops somebody from participating, ever. It's just a matter of, now we're just talking about how much would we be willing to pay for that. And so I have a good idea how I feel. Tracy, what do you think?
I really appreciate Dana's new insight. It would have been nice to have that earlier from our staff. But I agree that we probably should opt out this year and pay 100%.
Thank you. Shannon?
Opt out. None.
Okay. Tim?
I'm still in favor of opting out and paying for the program.
Max?
I'm going to state my opinion and then I'll say why. Opt out, pay 100%. why is that wages are only one piece of why people stay in jobs, right? We'll be talking about wages later on this evening. I'm certain of it. But it's more other programs that you provide to an employee that is, use it or not. It's that feeling of like belonging. And then beyond that, it's more than that, it's building team and being part of a team and getting a lot of work done that keeps people working in an institution. So back again, opt out, pay 100.
Okay, thank you very much. There is consensus. We're certainly a preponderance of city council. And we're not making decisions tonight. We'll make those decisions on the 6th, but thank you for the conversation. And
Look
so,
forward to having this conversation again
Well,
next year.
yeah,
With other different things.
well, we don't know. And so based on this conversation, we have the correct number in the budget. Thank you.
7K,
No, 14.
14K.
Mhm.
What was the 7K now?
7 would have been if it was 50%.
Oh, okay. 14.
And I didn't put a 0.
Sorry, I didn't know that. I thought opting in was gonna be important, but thank you for the clarification.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot. What is this survey you have?
That's
Down
the 11th, that's the quote we got on the survey.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
We did it on 11th Street.
Can I just
Please.
talk about it for
Yeah.
30 seconds? So city's growing, city has more needs coming up. We have to figure out how to make it so we have better working conditions, perhaps better, more. I don't know if it's gonna work up there or not for 13th Street, that 13th Street properties. The first step is to understand what we have and what we can do with what we have and go through some quiet title, so then we can figure out if we can actually do it or not, and if it's actually a viable place. We don't have a survey, case in point with the Community Justice Center. We can't really do anything. You have to start with a survey and understand your parameters. And from there, I'm thinking about the animal shelter, I'm thinking about the street department, I'm thinking about the future of our city 5 years out, like more of a 5-year plan. That's why I'm asking for that additional funding earmarked specifically for doing a survey. One time, one stop, and I don't know if it's less than 9K, it can go and dissolve back into it, but I just want to make sure that we can get through everything we know, so we can actually plan maybe for that property, but we need something in concrete to know what we can do and what we have.
Yeah, and I think that's wise. And one of the reasons, and I've tried to describe it, there's a mining claim that cuts across that property. And that would have to be cleared up in a survey and possible title work or a quiet title. Quiet title is not going to work because I've talked to the guy who owns the mining claim. You know, he thinks that's his property. So the survey is going to be an important step to know, as you point out, what is it we have to work with?
What do we
Because
have?
right now, we're not sure.
Where is that? Who owns the land?
And I would like to say on that, I think $9,000 is a lot, so I would definitely, and a fiscal responsibility, see if there's the potential to get that survey for less, but we can certainly put in the budget 9,000. I followed up with Chapin after our last meeting and gave him the feedback that we want to get a survey, but I would like to see it come in a little lower than that, but if it doesn't, it doesn't.
I would even call it, instead of a survey, maybe whatever that property title is, development. 13th Street development, whatever it is. So if it's less for a survey, and then we say, oh, wow, let's start looking at some conceptual plans or whatever it may be. We have, if we don't use it, we don't use it, but I do feel very similar to the paving fund. I think that it would be a wise move for the future of our city.
So would that come out of planning expenditures?
We could take it out of contingency that we just had.
Well, I think we could put it. I mean,
It starts already.
I mean, I think if there's consensus tonight, it's probably easier to, I think that if you're asking the appropriate department to put it in, I think it's planning.
It's great, yeah, sorry, I misrepresented, I didn't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
Donna?
Just thinking,
All right, thank you.
OCD. and I don't know.
I think 9K well spent.
Yeah, again, to Lori's credit, I hope it doesn't cost 9K, but that was Marcin Engineering. They're excellent, and we know we did a good product out of it. We did get a much lower bid, but we couldn't even get any details out of them, so that probably was not going to be money well spent. Okay. Really, the main topic tonight was going to be discussing wages. And so, as you know, what we have in here for almost everybody, with just a couple exceptions, is a 4% COLA and 2.7% merit increase.
And then I think based upon some of the feedback that we got at the last council session, we did make some adjustments, and so I think that I guess we just open it up for discussion at that.
Yeah, I noticed in the recent like 3D versions of the budget we've had, like the salaries have been very variable. They changed a lot.
Well, they went down, they
Yeah.
didn't go up.
Right.
I think that was based upon feedback from the council, is to have them go down, so we did that.
I don't know what that is, but we all got it. Westman. Okay. I have a question. Not necessarily about the wages. Why is it that some folks receive 457 retirement and then others don't? Do they opt out of that?
Yes.
You have to opt in.
You have to opt in?
Mhm.
Is it something that is? What is that? I mean, I'd be surprised that people don't opt into the retirement plan.
Yeah, I guess my comparison would be, Donna would be a fair comparison, like a 401k. It's
It is 401k, and I guess the reason people don't just put in is because it's only a match. So they have to put in X amount, and the city matches up to 5 or 6%.
Wouldn't that just make sense to me?
So we've tried to have several presentations, we know people involved.
And there,
Can we also?
The beauty of an opt-in and opt-out system.
and there isn't an automatic percent or something given to employees, even if they don't opt in or opt out? They opt out and then
Well, they don't actually opt in. I think the default is you have to sign up for the program, and if they don't, then they don't. Okay. I mean, it's not, apparently it's like the federal TSP program. I don't know why anybody would not participate in the federal TSP program, but people don't.
it's like an extra 5% you make.
The
Doesn't make sense to me.
the idea from people my age is I would rather spend that money now than later. It comes out, it does come out of your salary, right? At least that's the way it worked. From
It does.
is that percent or whatever amount you put in, city match it, you do gain money, but you don't have access to that money, and it's just short-sighted. I don't know why you wouldn't opt in, but people don't opt in.
I'm actually surprised that not a single person in the police department besides the chief himself has opted in. Only 2 people in the street department. I mean, the actual rate of folks opting in is like at maybe 15%. I mean, I'm even looking at the fire department. The fire department is less than 50% opting in for retirement. That's just very, very surprising to me.
Would it make sense to have an opt-out system? Maybe not this year, but in the future?
This is a federal program. I don't know if that's even an option.
Okay.
I think that the tough part is the employee actually has to contribute funds themselves, so I don't think we can.
Force them to contribute funds. That makes sense.
You force them to pay into the program?
Our retirement program is an option.
What kind of program do you have?
The like extra method. Well, what we did, yeah, we have two retirement plans, but what we did this year, and we'll do annually, is mandatory retirement meetings. So because I saw the same thing with my staff, after that meeting, people signed up.
30% is our minimum, like you have to contribute and participate at 3%, and then you can opt into the other benefits of up to 9%.
Take some notes.
So is yours a 457 plan?
We have a 401A plan and 457B.
And so in each of those, you can force a 3% match?
Our 401A plan is a document with our retirement company. And the document says that it's not optional for employees, and I think that's because statute at one point in time required public employers to offer a retirement plan or have employees participate in a retirement plan. Like the school district, it's not optional for you to not participate in para. So it's similar to that setup.
And there's an enforced employee contribution towards it in a certain percentage? Or is it like a pension plan where it's forced?
3%.
It's not in each mayor, it's just the 401A, that's the, no, you can't opt out of that contribution.
Okay.
And then you can add to either account or benefit.
That's really interesting, 401A, so that's fantastic, and to your point, that might be in our employees' best interest. The 457, why do you have both of those?
The 457B offers a pre-tax deduction, and also offers a Roth contribution. So we're really pretty flexible in our retirement plans that we have a normal retirement withholding, which comes out and hits your taxable income after your pre-tax deductions. Or we have the pre-tax 457B or the after-tax 457 Roth.
So the before tax 457B, then that income would be taxable at a later date.
When you withdraw it.
Got it, thank you.
It would be great to see some other folks contributing. I'm not gonna say it, I mean, I
Well-
can't hold their hands to the fire.
So I did get feedback from one employee just now that said, you know, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and once they're not, they intend to participate in the program. So,
Well, at a 4% cost living increase, they would almost not even recognize the fact that they'd even get an increase in wages and have money going away for the future.
That sounds so logical.
Okay, well, I really hope that number goes up in the future.
Well, I think we,
take a page from the county book and we can have, although we do that, Donna, don't we have, because I remember we entice folks with food to come to the meeting. Yeah, I think we've had them,
That didn't work.
well, the food worked. I
Okay,
don't
that's
know.
what I was gonna say.
Sign up for the program, but I remember we did that last year. We had the representative come and you scheduled it for upstairs and let everybody know and provided the food. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
meet with our representatives from CRA, usually about once a year, and we would be happy to share information about plans with you. They're all public documents accessible in the clerk's office too, if you want.
Okay.
Pull those and look at them.
Yeah, I think just encouraging participation, I think is the.
Oh, the other thing is that we do allow employees to take loans against the retirement account through our plan, so they're eligible to take out money and pay that back through their paycheck. At no fee, that the county doesn't take an administrative fee for that either, so that's also an option.
that's a nice benefit.
Is it loan for any reason or is there specific parameters?
Any reason.
Interesting.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Need
It's
a
the
card?
same thing for 401, is that offered for 457 as well?
For all.
So, I mean, that's ultimately putting money away for a rainy day.
Yeah.
and If you need it, and you're getting matched, which is,
And the Roth account is an after.
Covering your money.
So if I did it next. So that's also a really nice benefit.
Let's see why you wouldn't.
Good conversation, thank you. As you look at this, and Donna, you might give us some insights into the columns. Because, you know, you really just completed this for the last time today. or for the most recent time today, give us some insights into the different columns and how city council should be reading that.
Well, I did bring you a copy, so.
Oh.
We haven't actually.
Well, no, I'm talking about you're talking about the wages, right?
The other one.
Well, and the things that you and I talked about was the base gross is there's a projection of what their current is, which included the mid-year COLA, right?
Correct.
Okay, so, and a lot of the information, the way our spreadsheets have traditionally worked, we look at last year's wages and this year's wages, but because some of the wages changed, well, almost all these wages changed mid-year, you're getting an incorrect perspective. Remember, we were talking about, okay, well, no, you're looking at 12%, you're not looking at, 7.75.
Base gross is what they're making right now. And their increase isn't a guaranteed increase, it's, their increase would be 4% starting in 2023 after their base gross. Does that include the two individuals that the increase is greater than 0.675? Is it just a 4% increase for the two individuals that are have an increase greater than the 0.675? Because right,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so the increase for everybody on this spreadsheet is an increase of 0.675, meaning
Right.
a 4% increase for the COLA and then a potential with merit 2.75. There's two individuals that's in excess of the 0.675
That is
with an
correct.
increase of $11,200. Do those two individuals also get the 4% increase? Or do they get an increase of $11,200 to their base?
All
gross?
that would be included in that number. They wouldn't get an additional 4% over that.
No, but do they get a 4% increase in 23 and then, because $11,200 is more than 4%.
The 4% is part of that increase. They're not getting an additional 4%.
I know it's part of it, but it's in excess. So
It
like,
is in
if
excess,
you're,
right.
if you're saying, so if I'm looking at the increase. And I'm thinking about being fair and equitable across the board, there's two positions that are gonna make an increase of greater than everybody else.
Mhm.
In the entire city. Can you justify the rationale why those two individuals should be considered a higher wage than and a higher increase in every other employee? And in case of one, higher than that they're treated differently than all of their employees underneath them?
The answer is yes. Did we go through this
I
every
want to
year?
hear this. Ed.
Yeah,
I wanna
sure.
hear- I wanna hear this.
What we do every year is we evaluate people based on work ethic, contribution, and we've been working on for years towards pay equalization in terms of, again, we have this slide report that is something that is a guiding document, if you will. And for some people, we felt like it was important to treat those people differently.
Now, I disagree with the slider report, and I know I'm here on my own while everybody else is listening to me talk, but I mean, I actually think our county report is more straight up in our face what we should be looking at than the slider report, because Slide and Shape County, they have more. If I'm looking at the county and I'm thinking about a city manager versus a county manager, the county manager is responsible for an airport, a landfill, a planning department, a road and bridge department that extends beyond the streets of the city. They have much more responsibilities above and beyond, and that their wage right now, the city administrator, as it stands in the budget that I received today,
Right.
is actually more than the county manager. So I'm asking why, if we're gonna be, working together with our partners, do we need to have a city administrator's wages that is, first of all, not on par with the increase and the finance director? Those are the two outside entities. And it's not, I mean, I'm thinking about the face test. How can you tell your employees, you're gonna get a 4% increase, but these two people are special and they're gonna get an increase greater than. I'm thinking about what that means to our partners in the county. And what that message is there saying, oh, we know that you're, I just don't see please provide me some rationale on why why these two numbers should be outstanding beyond the 0.675 as everybody else in the city.
I feel like both those people have been underpaid based on what I know of the marketplace. Remember, this is a marketplace issue. This is not a city versus county issue. We've never concerned ourselves with what county people made in the past, because for years they made considerably more than the city. We had police officers leave the city and go to the county because they could make $10,000 more by walking across the street. We didn't go to the county and say, you need to reduce your wages. That's not the way it works. That's just not, we have to base our decisions on our people and what the market is.
Can I address one point that is difficult with comparison to the county, because this came up with the comparison with their financial department. Okay, so they have more staff. We have one person. And I'm looking at the county, and they have in their finance department, a finance director, accounts payable specialist, a finance HR intern. They're proposing a grant writer and accountant one. We have one person. So that's why what we're saying is it's sometimes hard to compare apples and oranges. I think that, that if you're looking at overall cost, yeah, they've got more responsibility, so they have more people, but we have less people and we have a lot of responsibility. So I guess what I'm saying is it's sometimes hard to compare a position if one person is doing it and they have an assistant and another person is doing it and they have no assistants. And that's, I wanted to raise that point specifically with the finance department.
Well, I'd like to hear from other council, but I will say this, is that when we're talking about our corporate knowledge and also building the bench, so when folks move on, either for other jobs or for retirement purposes or whatever, it probably would be better to probably get a part-time position to help the finance director here. So we can actually build on that. If that person leaves, I mean, if it's a job that has our finance director working greater than 40 hours a week, that actually is a work life and a balance issue.
Not only do we agree with you, but we've talked about that. We had an HR person who was supposed to start, and that person got a bit, an offer from their current employer that was $20,000 more and a bonus. That's what we're up against. We can talk hypothetically about what wages should be, and we should say everybody has to be held to the exact same increases. But that's lazy decision making, quite frankly. That's non-decision making. So I'm sorry, I want to hear from other city. Christian, you're confident a bit?
I think Max's point is more so maybe we should look at hiring more people and maybe decreasing the amount that we're raising, which I think is a pretty fair point. I mean, I can't speak for any of the people who are working over 40 hours, but in my experience, it's only manageable for so long before you just get tired of it and want to move on. And if we want longevity in general, speaking in generals, you don't really want anyone to work more than 40 hours a week consistently, which it seems like this is what it's addressing. Obviously there's also the scare of if we increase this employee's wage, whoever it may be, I don't really care who it is, but then we add an assistant, would it really be fair then to have this person paid this much with an assistant position? Does it make sense? There's arguments in terms of longevity for that. I personally don't have a problem with the two specific wages that we're looking at right now, but I think there are arguments worth looking at in terms of our longevity.
Well, I mean, again, to your point and to Max's point, that's what that HR person is supposed to do.
Right.
Because we've talked about that. I don't want to get too deep into that rabbit hole, but I do want to hear from other city council members along these lines.
But ultimately, I agree with
okay,
what's presented.
Thank you. Shannon.
I don't think I have a comment right now.
Okay, thanks. Tracy.
I agree with Max. If we have a 4% COLA and a 2.5% merit, that's what people get, period.
Okay, thank you. Tim,
I don't have a problem with the what's proposed here.
okay,
But I do agree that, we need some more people.
we agree. Dana,
I think agreeing that we need more people makes, particularly for, finance. Cause I think that's where we need the more people, to turn the pay increase in excess of the 6.7% into a bonus. Because what won't make sense is if we are able to hire assistants and offload some of that work, then that higher wage will no longer be justified, and we'd be in the position of saying, well, now we're actually gonna pay you $9,000 less. Which would go over quite as well. So I personally would prefer it be handled. We really think that these individuals deserve more than the 6.7, that we manage it as a bonus.
I appreciate that, but you will also notice that we backed off of the weights that we had in the budget before. Right? I mean, you know, so we're trying to reach an equitable point there. That makes sense, and that is market driven.
And I would argue that as far as being market driven, I mean, we certainly have looked to the county for wage guidance before, mostly as yearning, like I wish we could pay our police officers that much. But the county is like, this is our local market. They help form our local market. And so I do think it makes sense, not necessarily to try to be in lockstep with them, but to consider those numbers, like Max said.
I mean, consider me convinced. I think a bonus does definitely make way more sense longevity wise if we're looking at like, okay, we have these increases and then we're gonna also assume that they're gonna increase with everyone else's, because then it's not fair to those people to say, well, we're increasing everyone else's to 4%, but not yours because yours was already increased 4%. It's basically saying you got a pay cut. So I kind of agree with the point of like, yeah, that boys probably did an outstanding job that deserves some type of bonus for this time period because they did an immense amount of work that quite honestly they shouldn't be doing. And that just means that we really need to ramp up our game on getting those assistants for them rather than increasing their pay, because I mean, to Max's point, you can't just increase someone's pay and expect them to stay and hope that they stay for it. I think it's a work-life balance as well, and having those assistants will do wonders more than what the pay increase would, in my personal experience.
Unless the market would bear the higher salary, in which case they would very possibly go somewhere else.
Sure.
Where that market rate is established. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. What we're trying to do here is stabilize our workforce. That's goal number one.
I guess the problem that I see is that it's hard to look at these numbers, at the immense amount of increase on them, and then say that we did the same due diligence for the other positions in matching them with the market the same way that we are with these. Especially considering local. I know that traditionally you guys haven't looked at local, but I mean, quite frankly, they are literally competitors. As you said, we lost police officers to the sheriffs. It's just it's competition. That's how it works, like it or not. And we do kind of have to keep those in mind. So it's just hard. I see Max's point and I agree with the bonus. Obviously, they're doing more work than they should. Yeah, I just have to agree with him.
Okay. Thank you. Not quite sure where we go with this conversation at this point, we do need to go forward with the budget. We have to, at least we don't have to, but it is our goal to codify this budget next Tuesday.
Well, I think I'm leaning more toward have to, so we do have to notice it in the newspaper, and, so Don and I had a discussion today about it, and so if we're, I mean, we're close, I think we had this work session to get ourselves even closer, but I think we would need a commitment that we have something we are going to, we think we're going to.
Budget that the
fix, so we
public can
can-
look at, yeah,
So we can notice it in the newspaper.
okay.
Can we agree to the idea of a bonus that would match the funds that are being provided, but not a permanent increase in the wages? That way that the budgetary side of it is,
Well, an increase of the 6.7.
Yeah.
past the 6.7.
I'd like to see an across the board 6.4% COLA increase and the potential of 2.75 merit. That's the thing, is it's a 4% increase across the board, January 1, including the finance director and the city administrator, with the potential of a 2.75 merit increase across the board. And remove those two outstanding numbers that are above and beyond those numbers. So everybody within the city, it's a team, people. Everybody needs to be treated equally. And to be clear, our wages in the city have turned around quite amazingly. In fact, we are competitive against the county. In general, every single one of our wages is about $10,000 more than the individuals in the county right now, which is a significant amount. And that is our local market, is the county. So if we had a place that people want to come and work, people are gonna apply from the county if they really are looking for that $10,000 extra bump in pay. It's more than just the wages that keep people around. It's about their physical and emotional safety, their physical and emotional health, and their wages that keep them here. It's the conceptual, it's teamwork and team building and making people feel welcome in the workforce. Above and beyond, you can throw $1 million at somebody, and if their life is absolute garbage, they might stick around, retire early, but they're gonna say, I am out of here, right? I mean, they don't want to be in toxic environments. They don't want to live and work in toxic environments.
Okay, then I'm gonna throw out a suggestion based on everything I've heard. I don't happen to agree with you that everybody has to be treated the same. I think that's just, that's an avenue for not having to make a decision. But that's my private sector self, talking.
Increases, you can treat some people differently.
Yeah,
So anyway, that if we do, as you say, we do the 6.75 for everybody, which we have everybody except for 2 people in there. We've done exactly that. That we put in the budget an assistant for the finance. That would be, we already have in the budget an HR person that we put in that budget an assistant, and that we are given discretion for bonuses to make those differences up. That's what you had suggested.
I didn't say the bonuses. I mean, I want to know.
No, you did.
That was my question.
Well, no, I'm talking about at the last meeting, at the last city council.
Oh,
meeting.
yeah, for certain people.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Precisely, yeah.
I think it's probably wise to, especially is to add like an assistant position in the wages that, just like the HR director, that isn't currently filled. And then, if, yeah.
Then I'm
And
going to
do the
suggest a
bonuses.
part-time,
Mhm.
half-time assistant be put in the budget, and we'll have to figure out what that, put that number in there. And then, next week, then you'll look at it and hopefully you'll say, yes, we approve of this. Hopefully.
And I think if we're doing, I mean, honestly, if we're doing something similar to what the county was, and we're looking at families are. I think I sent everybody thank you, Tim, for sending us the county salaries.
Could you change the font, Tim? You got better eyes than I do.
Yeah,
They're in all caps. Everything's in all caps. Let's see. So, I mean, I just
Like it was yelling at me.
well, just to put this in, like, so we were looking that their finance department, and I don't know, but they have an accounts payable specialist at 42,000. That's currently, and that's not including a 4% puller, and then that's 42 for an accounts payable specialist, and then accountant one would probably, so that person actually has to be an accountant, that's 52.5, so just throwing those numbers out as numbers, and then the administrative assistant to the county manager, 46,725.
What does city council say? We're sitting right now. I'm not saying we have to use it, but we're sitting at $124,000 surplus. We're gonna add $9,000 to that.
I have some side questions about where that surplus came from, but
Well,
I don't know
we
who-
sharpened our pencils and we took one person out of the street department as an example. And we did put into the street department 10 hours of administrative help. So
I guess mine, some of these are like the marijuana city excise tax is double what it was last year, but the note says it was decreased.
That's
Do
an
and
interesting.
I was wondering, like,
That is, okay, so that's it.
come from,
It's a
because there's
very-
a couple others that are
Yeah,
like.
well, the marijuana in particular is a situation that we've been dealing with. It is a question in potentially a business that miscalculated what they have been paying. And so going forward, it would be a quite additional amount, and there would be quite an additional amount that is, as according to the state, is owed to us.
Yeah.
And we are in a position of discussing that with and the entity agrees that they owe us. We are relying on the state's numbers, they're relying on their accountant's numbers, and we're at that point, so it is significant, it is $120,000.
And it's on the very
It's in the
first page.
first
It's like,
page.
but we were very conservative in our approach because, it's a debate with
But-
them, between them and us and the state. And
My-
so there's a certain amount of uncertainty. That's why we were conservative in that approach.
my other question just is, I noticed the is it unemployment? Which used to be a 0.3% has dropped to 0.2%. Donna, was that?
Yes, I did get notice and stuff.
Okay. That's all. That was just a clarification. Because that was a money saver, I assume. Okay.
So good news on the revenues.
Go ahead, Christian.
As far as the budgeting goes with the assistant positions, numbers make sense.
Thank you. I think those are good suggestions and I think they're valid. I don't know where to put them, but we're kind of running out of room in City Hall, so.
Mayor, another, and I don't know if it's gonna be ready for this budget session, but we're talking about salaries and talking about employee retention, and something that I know that there's other ways of giving employees some benefits that is not necessarily salary driven. And I don't know if it's, like I said, right for tonight's discussion. However, there's certain entities in town here, like college, they give a certain amount of money per year for either, for wellness, as in for your, for a gym membership, or if you're gonna buy running shoes, or you need a new bike, or something to make it so they're thinking about their health and wellness, right, and that type of issue. Or, they can pay for their season pass or something like that. How do you incentivize? Say that again?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you incentivize beyond wages? Do you give them a few hours a week to match their time out to get exercise, right? That's something that I use in the federal government. For example, I have 3 hours of wellness every week that I can use if I go out 3 hours of myself and do it. So I,
Ethan only got one wellness day a year.
you did?
No, Ethan.
Oh, Ethan, oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I think.
I think I like the idea of some sort of a wellness funding.
Yeah.
Is much more straightforward. I
Yeah.
think we simply ran out of time on this to really dig into that as a separate benefit option.
Love
I
the idea.
love the idea.
Along those lines, I actually, this is a question for clarification, probably best for Caitlin. If you're on, under the animal shelter budget, there is a line for staff morale. What is, I'm not against that at all, but what is that? Yeah, no, I just,
Yeah, so,
It's nice.
other shelters have incentives for their staff, like they're gonna have a vet on staff, so you get, the shelter will pay for your animal to get looked at by the staff, the vet on staff. So since we don't have that, that was gonna be $50, if I recall, $50 a month, or $15 a week for like donuts at a staff meeting, or chips, or bubbly water in the kitchen area, as well as it's about $6 per vaccine. So we were going to break that out so that our staff can have money to fully vaccinate their animals, since we're regularly at risk at the shelter.
cool, thank you.
It is 8:30. I think we're gonna take about a 5-minute break and then reconvene. There will come a time. when you're gonna have to do this. You okay?
I'm trying, and you know me.
We have two more things that I think we need to focus on tonight, and there could be more, but the two that come to mind right now. We've had a proposal, and it's in the budget from the animal shelter. They're represented here. It was my personal opinion that it was a bit much. Some city council members thought it was okay. I think we should at least look at it. And Lori met with Caitlin and has left this in the budget. Truth of the matter is, I can live with it. I just think it felt a little bit over the top. Every year we have departments, and they come to us and they want to give us a wish list of everything they'd like to have. And sometimes, it's our job to look at that and decide, is that really what's needed? And, or, sometimes it's a matter of deciding, is that, there've been times in the past, Dan would certainly know that, 7, 8 years ago, he would come and say, I need a fourth seat. I need a fourth seat. And every year we say the same thing. You can't have it. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions around budgets and departments and need versus want. So I just like to open that conversation, see what city council thinks, and if you want to hear from Caitlin.
Is there a particular line item
Yeah.
you're referring to?
Well, actually, what they've done is they have completely changed their not just their pay scale, which has also changed. They've changed the hours pretty dramatically. They have 4 different people now who are full-time and 3 that are part-time.
Did I not get that?
You should have it.
It's page 12 of on the big sheet of paper. And then if you look into the 2023 budget notes, it explains the staffing breakout.
So
But
was there
also,
a
yeah.
particular thing that you felt was excessive or just thought?
I just
They-
thought the overall hours felt excessive to me for what is a small animal shelter.
I think a lot of that had to do with some safety issues. Correct, with the staffing,
Yeah, that was.
so I would be on board with that.
More also, I know it's small now, but like we've had issues with dogs and other animals around the city for a while now. It's only a matter of time before it gets bigger because the nature of what we're dealing with currently, over and over and over, as it seems to be an issue every single month and year.
How so? I mean,
Well, I mean, I just always hear about, oh, this dog's loose, this dog's loose, this dog's loose. There's another dog loose. You see 3 dogs running down the street with no owners all the time.
well, I get that. That's more of a police matter, animal control, not necessarily an animal shelter
But
issue.
can turn into an animal shelter issue for safety issues, safety reasons, if these dogs are aggressive, which it seems like they tend to be. And it seems like they've had issues with safety matters, so I think it's reasonable.
I feel like in the recent past. There was the concern that the animal shelter was understaffed. And was very susceptible to, oh, one person's out sick and now like. Somebody has to do a tremendous amount of overtime just to keep the place up and running, so. I actually think this expansion that's described here is not a bad idea. And
Okay, Max,
I'm not gonna. Second guess their need for. Staffing for safety purposes.
okay. Tim,
I think I already had my 2 cents.
okay, thanks, Shannon.
I'm on board.
I'm not opposed to it, it's just a little shocking to me, just the increase from 2022 to 2023. That's a big jump. Or am I missing something?
no,
No,
it's
a
primarily
huge
just more
jump.
people.
Yeah.
But there's more people.
What is the
How many
difference? in-
more people?
Yeah, what's
Is
the
it?
difference in people?
It is more people.
Well, how many?
So maybe we let Caitlin explain that, the dynamics of having the additional person and then the interplay between full-time and part-time.
Sorry I can't be there, everyone, and I had to take a muscle relaxer, so if I'm not making sense, Jenna is there to jump on for me. I just had some neck issues going on today. So with our staff, what's proposed, one manager at 36 hours a week, so that's myself, Jenna at 36 hours a week, so she would be Tuesday through Friday, and then 2 full-time positions, so that's gonna be the Sunday through Wednesday and Wednesday through Saturday people who can do office adoptions as well as animal cleaning. And then the part-time people, those are normally our kennel techs who are focused on taking care of the animals, cleaning the kennels, and then once they get proficient at that, they can bump up to shelter tech to do dog licenses and whatnot. They can speak more on recently how many hours it's been taking them to get the shelter clean in the morning, but it's easily taking 2 people 3 to 4 hours to get the shelter clean because we've had so many animals. I think my last report, we had 17 animals in the facility when it's designed for 11.
So what's the difference in this year's staffing versus next year's proposed staffing?
The proposed staffing, I'll have to pull that up, but it was myself, 1 assistant manager. Tyler, I don't know the exact breakout for the 2022. There
Part of it was increased hours against some of the same people. Jenna, would you like to chime in at all?
So right now.
Caitlin is, if it's any consolation, I think all of us have been dropped off.
Oh, sorry, guys, I didn't realize my microphone was still on.
I did direct message the deputy city clerk. This is Jill.
Okay, cool. I called Lori just in case they had specific questions for me, but it went to voicemail.
Right, is it working now? Can you guys hear us?
Yep.
I just unplugged and replugged it. It's magic trick.
Might not have been the best IGA in the world, but it's the IGA we have.
We wouldn't find you asking us, but.
Yeah.
And her staff. It is a better place than it's ever been in terms of how well it's run. I was a little taken aback by the fairly dramatic increase in total hours. We talk about safety issues and we talk about, well, if someone's out sick, it's every department in the city, you know? I don't know how else to express that, except maybe they're in more danger than other departments in the city. I don't know. Is that true of the police department? Is it true of the street department? What, you know, where do we draw that line? I don't know. I don't know quite where to draw that line. Honestly, don't.
What would your suggestion be, Mayor, for the animal shelter? If it wasn't this,
I guess I would almost rather see him with 5 full-time people rather than 4 full-time people and 3 part-time people.
I'd like Caitlin to respond to that because we had talked about the breakout, and this is where I think we need to defer to the department heads to manage their own departments as how many people or how they staff full versus part-time, because and if we can't get Caitlin because of the video or the sound, I think Jenna can answer this question about why it's preferable to have part-time. I think, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I think at some point we should think about going to not looking at full-time versus part-time, but doing full-time equivalents, FTEs. If you've ever been anywhere, then you just give the department FTE and they can decide how to staff it. But for the animal shelter, I think the concern is that full-time employees would have to work 5 days a week and then there's just burnout. So Jenna, can you?
Yeah, so I have worked at other animal shelters. We usually work 4/10s, so that way you have 3 days to kind of decompress from your job. Personally, I have 2 other jobs, so me working 5 days would mean I don't get a single day off. So I wouldn't personally be able to do 5 days, and I know majority of the staff on right now wouldn't want to do 5-day work weeks. We work with college students, so they need, days off to go to school.
Did we lose them again?
That this request is inclusion. What I don't see is here, we talk about it, maybe it's on hold for you, is a possible matter of expansion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, Caitlin did a lot of labor, and, that's to the mouse.
Was that
There's
an
a-
owl?
Val,
The mouse, and yeah, so, I think what we have is, we have still the money from the Ghost Estate. And I think what we would like to do is put together a plan, and I think we didn't have the ability to get that together. I don't think it's something that we want to rule out, but I also don't think that. We had a discussion about the survey and potentially moving stuff up to 11th Street, and we had a discussion of, well, should we do a modular temporarily? And I guess that my feeling on that was, is there's a consensus, we need to do it. There isn't a consensus on the best way to do it, and we don't have the best information to put into the budget, whatever the quote was for a modular. So
Okay.
I guess what I would say is, we committed to getting the animal shelter more space, and you need to figure out the best way forward on that, and at least. It maybe, and Caitlin got some information from other shelters, like an Alamosa that did it recently. It may be a capital campaign, it may be getting out there and doing a community. Input to potentially help fund it. It may be grants, it may be.
it is interesting you mention that, because in terms of looking at the animal shelter budget, what I remember specifically is Dan went out and found the money through grants to do what he needed to do. And so I think that's
If I can briefly, it's hard for us to get grants because we're not a nonprofit organization. So the majority of grants, while there are grants for government organizations in animal welfare, they are significantly less than the grants for nonprofits. And then there's going to be more government organization shelters that are fighting for those grants. But we did get a potential grant. We did get the $7,000 asking, but I believe it was $2,500 from the top of my head to put towards spay neuter surgeries for next year.
So I guess we want to do it, we just need to have a little more time to put together.
it's
the
just a
best plan.
process. It's a tough process.
And we were also talking about the animal shelter is not the only place that needs more space.
Yeah.
Right, and so we have to think about this more from a holistic planning standpoint of where we see the city in 10 to 20 years and build out for that, because I would not like to, I wouldn't like to see just a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid when we have issues with street department and storage and the expansion of the street department and their needs. We have a need, I mean, I know the police department's gonna go to the community justice center, but your staff is expanding. Do we have the ability for office space here in this building? Is this building more office space? I don't know. So we have to really look at the city as a whole, not just what the shelter needs, which is important, I'm just saying.
I would agree.
Thank
you.
well spent.
All right, do we feel, as a city council, we have consensus at this point? All right, thank you very much. I believe that the county would like to, talk about the fire department and the budget, and so, I'd like to hear from them first, and then, see where we go with that.
Yeah,
Jeff's our representative on the management board, so we'll speak on that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had put this on our calendars because we wanted to have a kind of joint discussion with city council. Since the fire department is a joint undertaking of the city and county, and we share costs, and specifically the way the budget is supposed to work, the preliminary fire budget comes through the management board, and then the city council for the city and DOCC for the county approve those final budgets. To put into our respective budgets, so we approved the fire budget to then split and put into our respective budgets. So I think a question we'd like to raise at this point, as we've delved into the fire budget, for city council is, do you feel like you've been given sufficient information about the preliminary joint fire budget? By city staff, and I think specifically within that, since the renegotiated union contract has a big impact on the salaries and things like overtime pay and other sort of, the legally binding contract. Has council been applied to those contract negotiations with the union? Do you know, city attorney has reviewed, that? From the county's perspective, our answer is no, we haven't seen that. Our county attorney has not had a chance to review that or been applied to the details. And again, that's a significant impact on the salaries, which is a major portion of the budget. So it's hard for us, given that, to make an informed decision on approving the preliminary budget and making it the final budget. Also say, just to be clear, we've been explicitly denied the opportunity to see the draft of the final union contract. I don't even know what state it's in. So as I said, that kind of makes it impossible for us to understand the budget and the details we'd like to, and that we've asked to be shown. And at this point, we can't give our final approval. We just wanted to point out that under section 5.2 of the IGA, which is actually called impasse, if we don't mutually agree on the budget, then we just use last year's budget with an inflation adjustment. And that's the position we're in right now, not having been able to understand the details of the renegotiated union contract. So, that's where we stand. Happy to share, any information like we've submitted to the city, number of questions we wanted sort of answered about the budget, and also a number of issues to resolve in 2023. Happy to share that in paper electronically. I just wanted to close again, like just ask city council whether they feel like they have enough information on the fire department's budget to be making that decision, and sort of reiterate our feeling that we don't currently have that information on the county side.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thanks, Jeff. I will answer part of that, and that is this budget is reflective of negotiation between the city and the fire union. And actually, it's not the city in the IGA, it says the mayor and the fire union. We did that probably 6 weeks ago. We negotiated in good faith. It is not completely filled out because the numbers, in this budget for pay are what go into that contract. That's what they've agreed to.
Does the mayor act as a representative of city council in those negotiations?
No. Yes, it is the mayor and the fire union in the IGA.
So unilaterally, we don't communicate that information to your fellow council members?
I have not, but it's in this budget.
Yeah, I guess we should back up to talk about, this is my first experience with the union agreement. So it's a management union agreement, and it is the terms and conditions that the management negotiates with the union. So it's everything from how you make leave requests to training to days off. And so the way the IGA is written, and I think this is because this is inherited, that the union was with the city, the fire department was with the city, and the union agreement was with the city. So the IGA is written that nothing in the IGA will subsume or override anything with regard to the union contract with the fire department and the city. And that the contract is essentially between the union and the city. So past practice, with my understanding, was that the union would come to the mayor as the person who's acting on behalf of the city, as the management. So it's management, it's not a city council. It is an administrative management agreement between the city and the union. And again, not between the chief. And so again, the chief is apprised of some of this, but it's the negotiations between management and the union. And then my understanding of past practice is that those negotiations have been with the mayor. I was allowed to attend that meeting and we negotiated, but it's not, I guess that the point is we have an IGA that specified that that was the process, and that's, mayor informed me that's the process we've been following for 7 years. So,
As long as I've been involved, yeah.
yeah, so we sat down and negotiated in good faith with the union. I don't think that they have any expectation that they're gonna get anything as far as salary that's not in this budget. I mean, that's the way the mayor's explaining is that the salary numbers get plugged into that. They knew that we were gonna ask for a 4 to 5% COLA. They understand that that is your decision on a 4 to 5% cost of living increase. That's, we can't make a promise. We made it clear that it was your discretion. So they're gonna be told that it's a 4% COLA. They were also told that it's potentially, we were asking for 2.5 budgeted merit, but their merit's based upon the review. So I don't think there's, I don't, I mean, I think there's a few training opportunities that are in there that cost money, but I
I
don't.
asked for some things that we just said no. I mean, which I do almost every year. They almost always want to ask for things that we're not willing to do, and that's just the way it goes.
I would,
So,
oh, I was just gonna back up what, because I've certainly interrupted those conversations before, dropping in and just at least the way that our roles are spelled out in code is that the management issues are not under the purview of council. We do hear about the negotiations that they're taking place, and we do see how it plays out in the budget, but really the only time we're really involved in managerial things is when we're invited to, like, in a hiring committee that the.
No, I understand that. I mean, I just,
So do we know the intimate details of the negotiations? No.
I just feel like the budget should drive the negotiations with the union, and to the county, it feels not very good to be asked to write a blank check on a negotiation that we didn't know of or didn't have a part in, or don't know what is being asked of. It's just flying for us, and it doesn't feel equitable to us at all when we're paying
Yeah.
the share of the budget.
I understand that, but it's reflected in the budget. You're looking at, anything that was negotiated. And remember, I feel pretty strongly, we don't treat the fire union with any particular deference, on much of anything. I can't remember the last time we made an exception for them that was different than any other city personnel. As an example, they asked for 3 additional holidays. And we just said, no, it's something to me are pretty simple. And they have a great attitude. I think they come in knowing that they're asking for things they're not going to get. I think it's just kind of their job to do
But
that.
That's not the point. It's collaboration. We're not getting it.
Would it be, and then this is not. This is sort of me as an outsider,
Mhm.
but is there some reason why, there couldn't be a county representative at the negotiation?
If we rewrite the IGA, I don't see why not.
Union contract.
No, it's in the IGA.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
The union contract negotiation?
Yes. Definitely is. Mhm.
yeah, it indicates that it's a union contract between the city and the union. It doesn't indicate it's between the county and.
Right, but then the management of the fire department is by the management by the board.
So we don't get a say.
And I would just like to point out that the core of this is like an FLSA question and legal matters that we had a question about, which couldn't be answered by the mayor or Dan. And then the union contract came up, and that added even more confusion and concern to us of what we were or were not tying ourselves to as far as how compensation was being treated and paid based on what language is in the union contract. So the numbers are one thing, and then the method may be another, and maybe it's not spelled out in the union contract, we don't know.
And for us, the other, sorry, Jeff, the other issue was when we asked about clarification or a legal opinion, there isn't one because the union contract hasn't been seen by the city's attorney. So there's that. Go ahead.
Well, and just to add onto that, I mean, about what the point is here, it's like we weren't asking for a seat at the table with the union negotiations or to interfere in day-to-day management operations of the fire department. We just feel like as part of the management board's process of
developing the joint budget, you know, what we're paying people is a huge determinant of the budget. And the union contract negotiation, including like overtime rules. As I think Sarah mentioned, you know, that has a huge implication for the budget, and it seems like that's not a day-to-day management issue. You know, that is a significant, you know, management board level.
Okay, I'd like to ask you some very direct questions. What would you like to see from us at this point?
The union contract.
Okay,
We've been denied.
well, we were told by our attorney who has seen it. I don't know what made you think she has not, but she has, and she's advised me.
You told us in a work session that she hasn't, and that she hasn't issued an opinion on how you pay people. You told us that in a work session. Lori wasn't there, you were there, and Dan was there, and I explicitly asked that question, and you
Okay.
said no, you both said no.
Okay, well, this came up fairly recently, and Christiana has seen it. And she's advised that until it's finalized, until it's signed, that it's not a public document. So that's what our attorney has said.
Okay, but to be clear, I mean, no matter what the IGA is between, not the IGA, pardon me, the union contract between the unionists and you, mayor, unilaterally, they pay 70% of, I mean, mayor, play nice in the sandbox.
That's why I'm just asking, okay.
I want to mention that Chris Floyd said that Christiana told her that she has not seen the CBA.
Oh,
My personal opinion is that unions tend to make sure that they're not asking for over, above and beyond that would put the entire operation under. That's how unions operate. They want to make sure that their employees are getting the best at the same time of making sure that it's feasible. And I understand why they would be upset when they're contributing 70% of the budget. I'm at the very least wanting their attorneys to look at it to see if it's a legally possible budgeting. I don't think it's wrong to make some type of IJ amendment that allows Chris Floyd to be there or our attorney to be there always at all times, or however we need to frame it. But I also just don't, in terms of the actual money part, I don't see an issue because I
But
imagine it's.
also,
in
I
good
mean, I
faith.
know we have our history about what to do with documents and publicity. But the county is not the public, like they have a seat at the table for the funding of the fire. And.
Yeah, so I guess I wanna emphasize that this isn't an attempt to exclude the county, and I wanted to find out, because we've been checking in to find out what you're thinking on COLA and making sure that we're in partnership on that. So I don't think that we're trying to be different than the county. I think we're trying to be on the same page, especially appreciating that the county does pay a good portion, not only of the fire department, but of the animal shelter. I think the problem with the situation with the union contract is that the mayor followed a past practice where the union came and said, let's negotiate. They sat at the down table and we negotiated and said, okay, good. The county had never asked to be at the table, had never wanted a copy of it. And so I think the feeling is, at least on my part, is we negotiated an agreement with the union, and now I kind of feel like, are we opening the door to renegotiating it? Because we've basically said it's done, basically putting in the whatever it's 4 or 5%. So I don't want to go back on the word of management to say this is what we've done for this year. So I don't think, and I think what we're saying is this process could work. We followed a process that we followed in the past, and so the county is saying, okay, we've been excluded from that, and we understand that they want to be more included. So I think either it needs to go through the fire management board, which is the board that manages this, and whoever the commissioner is that's their representative. I guess it isn't that we intentionally excluded the county, it's just that it wasn't the process.
It's just, it's a new territory.
Right.
We've
So-
had 5 meetings on the fire department.
Yeah.
budget, and this is the most that you and the mayor have told us about any of this.
So I think
That
it's
seems like the
But
problem.
back to the point, like, we are actually started and wanted to talk about the hourly and the compensation and the rate and the payroll and and that question couldn't be answered. And if we even want to talk about that in the future, we need to know that that's not restricted or somehow explicitly outlined in the union contract regarding compensation. We don't have to have that conversation tonight necessarily, or maybe we want to, but there is an issue and a question that hasn't been able to get answered on the way that ours, Kayla and Chris can better explain that, but
Yeah, and
So,
but I just say like with our sheriff's department, the sheriff's office, we had a lengthy work session with them about, the treatment of overtime, especially for departments like the fire and sheriff's office that can sometimes work like long shifts and then have long times off. It gets weird as you like shift between weeks and pay periods and like, you have to be careful about not just like legal compliance, but also what you are actually committing to pay people and what people understand are gonna get paid. And you need to look at that in detail, and we
Yes.
haven't been able to see those
Well,
details.
so-
We
and
don't
so
know where that
So,
language sits.
we also asked for the policy on how the city has their finance department process the pay and the overtime. And there is no policy, it's just a verbal agreement between Dan, the mayor, and the finance department. So we don't actually know how any of it works. And we really feel like paying 70% of the budget, we should be privy to some of those so that we can prepare to answer the questions of what we're paying for.
So I guess the question I have, I'm trying to figure out, so we have a base salary, we'll just say of somebody, whatever it is, I don't care what the number is. But you're saying that the salary here for each one of these people are not reflected appropriately annually? We don't know.
We don't know, we asked that question and we got the answer that it includes overtime being paid out regardless of if overtime was worked or not. Because it's easier to calculate, but we asked for the policy that reflects that. There is no city policy that reflects that. So we asked how hours are accounted for. There is no policy that reflects that either. It's just written into the union contract, so we asked for a copy of the union contract. We were not given that either.
so it seems to me that this is new territory that obviously needs to be incorporated into our annual practice. If the contract has already been negotiated, is it reasonable to say that this year, the way things are, to provide the contract with the understanding that it's already been settled, but that next year, moving forward, there'll be more of an opportunity to review before finalization. And if we don't have policies,
That already exists.
if we don't have policies, like Commissioner Marcella described, we need them. And that's something we need to do, if those don't exist.
My concern with that is that if you don't have a policy and you're paying somebody $80,000 without a policy, and then you generate a policy off of an audit of your payroll records and find out that that's inflated by $30,000, and then you tell that person, oh, by the way, you've been paying me wrong, we should really only pay you 50 grand, they're gonna leave.
I think that concern, while valid, is not an excuse to keep putting our head in the sand.
No, totally, that's just my concern going forward. My concern is that the more we untangle this, and the fact that there is a policy, if we're way over inflating wages just to pay them overtime, regardless of if it's worked or not. That's an issue, I feel like.
I guess my understanding of what Dana's trying to address also is like, what is done kind of thing, and it would be unfair to both union people, employees, and mayor, for its work, to say, like, let's redo that. And we see, at least Dana and I see the importance in including you all and into these conversations. This feels like would it make sense then to go ahead with what we have now and then change our policies to include you in the future in some way? I don't know how that.
We have in the IGA that the fire management board reviews all this.
Right.
The policy is a federal policy. Just so you understand, it's not a city policy.
Chris can speak to that.
Okay, so I mean, it is a very complicated policy, incidentally, to understand that firefighters are 48 on and 96 off. What happens with that is that then every 2 pay periods, they work 2 shifts, which is 96 hours. The 3rd pay period, they work 3 shifts, which is 144 hours. So because the threshold is 106 hours for overtime on that 3rd pay period, they get paid overtime for the difference between 106 hours and 144 hours. And that's a federal policy.
Okay, but I guess I care less about the policies. It's more so the idea of just sharing
Yeah.
the idea. Yeah.
Chris.
Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, the BOCC met with Chief Daley today, and what we discussed is the fact that the way the compensation plan for the firefighters was described, yes, it complies with the Fair Labor Standards Act's provisions for public safety employees, but it actually exceeds them. It's not just complying with them, it far exceeds what the requirements are for that compensation. And Chief Daley admitted that, yes, that was the case. And I think what that raises is the concern that the city, through the collective bargaining agreement, is negotiating terms that exceed what the law requires without any input from the county, who in turn has to pay 70% of those additional compensation terms.
Describe to me how it exceeds it, because this is the first I've ever heard about it.
So go ahead, Kayla.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say that's in terms of the way the compensation plan is paid, and what Chief Daley has shared with the county on that is that they actually, when it comes to the overtime, if you will, or the projection of what might be overtime, they are paying that or providing compensatory time at 1.5 times the rate, the hour, hours, if you will, regardless of whether the employee works that. They're just automatically giving that to them, which that's not what the Fair Labor Standards Act requires.
Okay.
It's only
That's a little
supposed to
bit
be on
different.
time actually worked.
A little bit different. It's a nuance to that. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand what Commissioner Marcella is saying. And so we can review that. If you're talking about the collective bargaining agreement, the collective bargaining agreement that changed it from 96 to 106 was like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
But that's.
Donna, do you remember how long ago that was?
Yeah, it was in 2019.
Okay, so that's not in any recent collective bargaining agreement in terms of how that was decided.
Salary and then the salary with the compensatory time.
Right.
That was included, that is paid out regardless. And if you take a day off, from my understanding in our work session, during the time that you're receiving your compensatory time, your day off is also given to you at time and a half.
So I've done actually some research on that since that meeting. What we ended up doing is we actually raised the hours worked of 2,920 from like 2,480 or whatever it was. So what that is, instead of it being that half or 1.5 times, it brought their salary rate down to compensate for that, so that they weren't time and a half, from my understanding.
But I don't think it's
And again,
legal
it
to.
was, so to be able to do the 106 from back in 2019.
Yeah, but I don't think
We
that you
used to
can
work-
change the total hours to lower some of the rate. I think that's.
We went from day on, day off, day on, day off, 2 days on, 2 days off. That's how our schedule used to work. It's called a modified Kelly. And then we went to 48.96. And then we ended up changing the FLSA to 106 hours. To,
Fair Labor Standards Act.
yeah, well, one, to make it better for finance, because that other way was kind of not there. But also to just make it clean across the board, and from what I understand, it may be a little better than the basic FLSA law, but it's not significant, like we're not rolling in money type. You know what I mean? Like we just changed it from the hours, instead of 212 hours to 106 hours. And then the bigger thing in that was anything over 106 hours, because 96, 96, and 144 calculated out, right, was the 106. Then anything over 106 constitutes as overtime. And that's when they actually end up getting over. Is anything over 106 hours.
Sure.
I got a question now. These are a couple quick, there's two points that I'm just really. Number one, are people getting compensated for hours they're not working?
We don't know.
Because that doesn't sound right, right? Donna's shaking her head. Number two, is this base gross salary and like for our fire department? You're saying that somebody that has a base salary of $60,000 or whatever, they're making more money because of this and we're
No,
paying them?
we got two different, we don't actually know what we got. We got one that said like base salary 44,000, salary with compensatory time 60,000. So we don't actually know what it is that we're paying.
So the number that you're looking at there, that's a regular time rate. Also to include compensatory time in that number. So they're working 2,920 hours a year versus somebody that works 80 hours.
Got it.
Right, it's like a 100, however many hours less of more than.
It's
I would also say
fully
this,
loaded number.
and I'll get to Commissioner Mudge in just a second. I would say, and this is something that you may find interesting, is that every year the fire department comes in under budget for total employee costs. Not sure how they do it, but they always do it. So, anyway, I'm sorry, Commissioner Mudge.
Just in section 15 of our IGA, it mentions the union agreement. But I'd have to read it 6 more times to make sure it's not contradicting itself legally. It says the agreement won't contradict the IGA. And also nothing binds the city to enter into this agreement. So the other question was, do we have to enter into the agreement? What is the agreement? Is it beneficial for the operation of the fire department? And that's part of my question too. What does that mean for the city, the fire department, the county, and the bigger picture?
It's actually a really interesting question, because this is something I didn't know before as mayor, is you don't ever have to negotiate with a union. There's never a requirement that says you have to negotiate with a union. In there, it says that they will notify us, I think by June 30th, that they want to negotiate that year. And so we have always honored that agreement. We've never actually said, no, we don't want to negotiate, but you're absolutely correct. That is an option. We don't have to negotiate with them. We just do.
Is that municipality code? I'm assuming it works differently between corporations and local governments.
I don't know. It may just be municipalities. That's a good point.
I would imagine it's municipalities, because I know it's doable in the corporate area. I mean, given what Starbucks is doing, it's heading to that direction. But I guess more to the point of what's going on is that it seems like this is all stemming from them not being able to view the document, to be honest, less so than actual complaints about the specifics about it. And a lot of this could be addressed by just allowing them to. So I think it's fair to say, at least I think it is, to keep it the way it is now, because obviously what's done is done, and make an intentional effort to review that IGA and modify it in a way that includes the county for the future, so that they have say in the negotiations and can view the negotiating document.
It's not the only IGA we need to.
Yeah, admittedly, yeah, it's gonna be a.
I'm sorry,
complicated-
Jeff, you had a comment?
There's not much.
Oh, okay.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not following any intended logic in like the agreement between the city and the union is X, and therefore the mayor gets to unilateral decisions, and the council's never even reviewed like that kind of liability in that agreement.
Yeah, shouldn't the council approve the
So
budget first?
I just feel like it'd be great if we could see that before it's agreed upon for another, like, what are the terms of the union agreement? Is it annual?
But
Is it
I guess
3 years? Is it 5 years?
it's annual, and I think that's what Councilmember Luna is saying, is that we would agree to that process going forward.
Well, like, we're at a point right now, I don't know, like, we're at a renewing point right now, and I don't, not understanding what the terms are in there, is it a 3-year agreement that gets revisited every year?
And
Annual agreement, okay.
well, actually, so that's, I guess, the mayor's point, is we have an agreement with the union. They can request negotiate that every year. We can decline to negotiate it, and then we have the same agreement. I mean, we have a union, we have to recognize the union. So, yeah.
I guess I'm just confused as to council's participation in that, like,
It's-
they have the budget. number there, So don't they, or the management board that sets the budget.
If the union agreement changed the budget numbers, but it's actually just the opposite. You know, we do the budget and then those numbers get plugged in to the union agreement.
So,
And that's what they've agreed to. It's
so the union agreement isn't done this year.
only because until the city council has agreed that these are the budget numbers, then those go into it. The other things have changed.
And if hypothetically, if the county doesn't agree with the preliminary budget and make it final, and we go to the impasse clause, then what does that do to the numbers that drop in?
You could do that, but this budget is a really good budget. It is duplicative of your budget process.
My job in understanding that and having some questions, we've been trying to answer this through multiple management board meetings and multiple interactions, and we just,
Well, it just sounds like
I mean, now
we,
it's kind of like bulldog on a bone, like we just want the answer, not to be patted on the head and told it's a great agreement.
What is the answer what is the question? I guess that's where we're all here to answer it. but-
We want
The other meetings.
we want appropriate participation in what we're paying for. We're paying 70% of a department's budget and have no say in how anything is done. And the management board doesn't function in a way for us to have that participation, and that's what we want. And we want some answers as to what we're negotiating with the fire department.
So I guess
And
that's
what exactly is the written overtime policy for this department, and how is it handled in the
Yes.
finance and payroll department? Where's the written set of rules that we can take a look at?
wait,
What is your legal opinion on it? What
wait,
does your attorney say?
wait, hold
about it?
on. So.
Those are our questions.
I was gonna answer it. If you want an answer, I was gonna actually ask for an answer. Can I have someone answer the first question?
Sure.
Okay, so as far as the written policy, you've given the county an answer, but we don't have one, is that correct? A written policy.
Well, the written policy is in the union contract that was negotiated.
No, we don't.
Oh my God.
I have to sign, it has been executed.
Okay, so
But we can't see.
so there's a couple different requests here. One is like increased transparency, which we should be able to address this now.
Yeah.
The other is structural, which is we need to change the structure so that you guys are at the table more frequently and
well,
have
so let's talk about
access.
the IGA, because I think that this is what was contemplated by the IGA when the fire department was set up. So the fire department is city county. So there's gonna be overlap of management. So the way that the management board was set is so that the city and the county had a voice on the management board to manage the fire
But
department.
we don't really.
Well, so. Can I finish?
Yeah, sorry.
So the IGA set up a structure and a system where there's a management board, the mayor's on it, there's a county commissioner representative, and there's the chief. That's.
No,
the
there
management.
is another.
Oh, that's right, this is not at large, you're right. So the idea is that the management board would be doing all this, and all this should be done through the management board and the county's representative to the management board. It's my understanding that the management board hasn't been as active as it has been in the past, but I think the process is in place for that voice. I just think that in this case, that process wasn't utilized, and I don't think that I don't think you need to recreate the wheel to adjust this. I think what we need to do is we need to reconstitute the management board, have it meet on a regular basis, have the county representative come to that management board meeting with these requests for documents, requests from everything. It shouldn't be a directive. Through the meetings of the management board, I actually think that is.
County manager.
I think that's it. I think they should be more appropriately handled through the management board. That's the system that was contemplated. So at any rate, I think we have a system that we agree upon in the IGA. We followed that system. The county's not happy because they do not feel like they have a seat at the table, and I understand. I've heard what you have said. I think it's very clear that we need to revisit the IGA so that when you're paying 70% of the fire department budget, you feel like you've had an appropriate say in it. And I think we've heard loud and clear tonight that you feel like you haven't had an appropriate say. I guess the point right now that we're at as the city is we're trying to decide on the fire department budget tonight. And what I want to find out, and as far as the answers to the questions, I think our answer to our question is, and having you come here, is we've got some budget numbers in here that we've tried to mitigate with a 4% COLA. We reduced the bumps in pay based upon feedback that we got from you all. And so I guess then the question is, for council tonight is, are we going to go forward with this budget as presented and with input from the county about what they're thinking they might do?
So I think that the problem here is that they're saying, hey, look, you can do that, but then we can decline it because we don't have enough information to go off of. And then what we just did is pointless. And like, it's going to default to what we had.
Right.
That's kind of what they're saying. They're trying to get the contract out of us. And I don't think in us passing or not passing this budget, that is being addressed. I don't understand why we can't just give them the contract, to be honest, but I would like to think that you guys would, also agree with, like, we're not going to change the contract. You can see it, but we can't change it because it's already been negotiated, and it would be unfair to the union and to the workers to renegotiate that contract, even though it's already been negotiated. However, setting up a place in the future to where you are way more involved, whether that be through actually going through with what the IGA says or modifying the IGA to be more inclusive. I guess what I would like to see is us to come to a mutual agreement that says, hey, well, we're going to pass it because unfortunately this is the way it's been ran. And personally, I have trust in the union, the negotiations that happen to go through with it, and we should fully include you into future prospects and if possible, share the contract with you all.
It's just concerning to me that like there's a written policy in the union contract and nobody knows about it.
Yeah, we
Like,
asked
the
that
mayor
question
should-
to the mayor.
I have-
So if we could see that, and there is a date, December 1, if we can't make an agreement in our IGA by December 1, we have a day to be shared that contract, to review it, maybe we have no concerns.
Okay,
Maybe there is no conflict in the union agreement and our IGA, which is great, and we can continue this conversation through 2023. We'd love to know if that's the case.
okay,
We'd love
I have
24 hours.
3 questions.
please.
1. Am I correct in the understanding that the negotiated union contract does not affect the salaries in our budget? The salaries in our
That's
budget
correct.
affect the negotiated union contract. Does the way that overtime is calculated affect the budget?
No,
Is the overtime calculations, are the overtime calculations demonstrated in the union contract or in a separate verbal agreement in the department finance.
No,
relationship.
Donna has pointed out that was done, the move from 96 hours to 106 hours was done, you say in 2020, 2019. So it's not gonna be in this union contract.
So
Go ahead. Oh,
do
sorry.
we have those prior union contracts?
Yes.
Okay, so I have 4 questions now. Can we,
That's up to you.
can we just give the county the last 5 years of the motherfucking contracts?
We can, I think one of those years, the union declined to negotiate, they just, you know, they said, we don't need to negotiate this year.
Okay.
Don't know why, but that's up to
Can we
them.
Do that.
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can, I only have. I don't even know if I have last, I think I have last year's and this year, but I don't have past that. I
Okay,
can Get you. what we have tonight.
we'll get it to you tomorrow.
The current draft.
The current draft too, I mean, you know, the only thing that will change, the only thing that will change in that draft is to plug in these numbers, so.
Like,
But we didn't know until tonight what those are gonna be.
So based on all of that, then I don't have a problem with the salary numbers as they are currently presented to put in our budget.
Sure, every salary number is the same formula as everybody else. And in fact, you know, mirrors the county as well.
Except for they work more hours than everybody else because of, these are loaded numbers. They work 2,846 hours, whatever this is a loaded number for the fire department. Except, I'll throw in the wrinkle, when they go on fire deployments, wildfire deployment, which is above and beyond, that's a salary outside this. And so those overtime numbers are not as part in.
But those are separated out into the wildland deployment budget.
Let's get to the big picture again.
Jeff,
Well, sorry, I just a clarifying question. How is it possible that the rules and policies for compensatory time, overtime, don't affect the budget numbers?
Because it's loaded in here already, but the overtime,
According to a formula that we don't know. So surely the formula affects.
Yeah, how you do FSLA and how you pay people and what your week is that you pay people. And as Chris just said, you have to have a policy demonstrating what your work week is, what your time is, and if you're treating them as salaried employees, that's different than treating them as an hourly employee that's subject to overtime.
From what I understand, the mayor said that he is, or whoever, I don't know who else is gonna do it, is going to share the draft. Where it will explain what that is. I don't think any of us here today. I don't know, I
And
don't know. what-
in
It
our
is-
budget, the overtime numbers are always estimated, so. That is a not firm figure.
well, no, it is,
To
it
be
is.
getting on this end.
No, it is a lot to firm number, because when, the thing is that when they go 48 on, 96 off, 48 on, 96 off. And the way that the pay period works, it makes it so when they have those cycles, they are automatically have an additional amount of overtime above and beyond every third pay period, correct? And that number is reflected in this budget, correct?
yes.
That's where it is.
It's
That like
in salaries.
Yeah.
There's another,
Salaries, there's a different.
there is a
overtime.
there's a
different
different-
overtime budget for things that are out, that happen outside of that.
Of that, but like the recurrent overtime that occurs just by their schedule
Yeah.
is in this loaded number in our budget today.
So my point, sorry again,
No, go ahead.
like from our discussion with the sheriff's office, like how you determine those shifts and the rules you have about sort of when overtime kicks in and over, you know, what your pay and how that meshes with pay periods. That has an impact on people's salaries and therefore the total department budget. It just does.
I just also think it's important for city council to know that the salary numbers that the city determines and sets by the county to the IDA. It doesn't bind us to pay those salaries.
So again, the point comes up that it sounds like we need some written policies, but those are not going to be done in the next 24 hours. They will go on our to-do list. I know, I wanna know, I work these hours too, and I don't get overtime. I mean,
Me either.
Me either. That's not the nature, that's not the jobs we signed up for. But, yeah, agreed.
We're gonna get a contract.
That's right under section 5. In the event an agreement as to the joint fire budget cannot be reached by December 1 following the beginning of budget negotiations, joint fire budget for the ensuing budget year shall be the prior year's joint fire budget plus an adjustment for inflation equal to the prior year's annual percentage change in the consumer price index for the Denver Boulder area using the first half year estimate or 5.5%, whichever is left. The year-over-year change from the fire department budget from 22 to 23 is 8.22%. I'm assuming that the 5.5% is left. So that's my recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yep.
so if that's where we are, then do we have to adjust our budget numbers for the stuff?
Not yet.
I'd like to recommend that we take the $125,000 that we took, that we put in the budget for capital improvements. Out currently in that. That is where we would come up with somewhat of the city budget or actually kind of compromise of getting back to last year's budget if they stand where they want to stand.
It's not a bad idea.
Sorry, I'm confused now. Was the intention to share it?
Yes, that's what we've been trying to express to you all for the past 20
No,
minutes.
it's tonight. I
Like-
didn't see you tonight. So I'm-
That is the intention that we did
But
want.
I'd also like to go back and get as many back contracts
Yeah.
to them
Well,
as
in
as
particular,
possible.
the 2019, I
Right.
think is critical.
I think we even go further back, over 2019, because that's when we were in that 212 hour compensatory time. It's in the FLSA law as well. And that will show kind of a track record of how that changed over the years.
Okay,
And I can meet with the union president and see how many contracts we have at our fingertips.
okay, thank you. Let's make sure we get that done tomorrow.
Contract, but talk to Dan about when it changed. So I have them readily available.
What did change between 2018 and 2019? Is that what you're thinking? Okay,
So it sounds like you all are getting them tonight. Is
We'll
that
get the ones that I have, I'll send tonight.
okay? And
We'll get you the rest.
do you still feel like the recommendation is to go with the, even if you get the, so then we should just go with Dan's original point, which is we should supplement it in capital improvements.
December 1st.
Which is,
My recommendation.
we don't have a meeting before then.
Yeah. We don't have a meeting before that and we can't make any budget changes to that. So we have to go off the idea that they're gonna go ahead and deny it. So I think it's appropriate to go along with what Dan said and change some of those budget changes into the capital fund improvements.
we'll see if that's necessary.
Yep.
Okay.
It's about 10 till 10. As we wrap up, anything left that city council would like to still discuss?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I actually, so there's a couple, we kind of left it off. I mean, we went through Colorado's Gift Day, we gave people money, hip hip hooray, Tabor Opera House check, cabling, awesome. Zero to the EDC, threw it in the contingency fund, Main Street funded at 60K, family opt out, 13th Street. The whatever you want to call it, the surveys in, salaries is gonna be equitable, even though the mayor doesn't like it. At 4% across the board with a potential 2.75% increase merit. If they do so suddenly, our super merit it is, we're gonna add an additional part-time finance person. to the budget.
We asked Donna to
Right.
put that in the
We're
budget.
gonna add a part-time animal shelter person.
Well,
That's
That's already in
That's
there.
in the budget, okay.
The animal shelter's approved as presented.
We are gonna play nicely in the sandbox with the the Board of County Commissioners and the county manager. And one thing we didn't talk about was, we talked about perhaps some sort of incentive for beyond salary for our employees, and we just kind of like fizzled out. Like we had, oh, that's a good idea. I said wasn't right. If it's not right, you can
Okay.
tell me.
No, you're right, and that just one of those bandwidth issues that we just didn't get to. I like the idea. We never really seriously discussed it. Let us do this. Let's look at that and put together a number.
Okay.
For that, that will be one thing we probably will have to consider putting in the budget on the 6th, but we have to be as concise on the 6th as we can in approving the budget for DOLA. But if that's one thing that we may be able to add.
Wellness
We could
incentives.
move some money into operating contingency with the intention to develop a wellness.
Yes.
I
yes,
know,
that'd
I'm
be
making
great.
more work for myself, but to
Just
set up
something.
a wellness.
I would agree with that.
Do you have a, just out of curiosity, do you have a number in mind? $300.
Well, we can't even buy a purpose. I'd say 750 per person.
750 per person sounds reasonable to me.
That seems like a lot.
That's as much as you'd make if we cut 3 hours per week, and I think that's also reasonable, so it's probably more if we cut 3 hours per week. 750 is honestly kind of cost saving.
Person towards,
I don't know yet. That's
Wellness.
We'll have to make a proposal of some sort and we'll decide, how does that work itself out between full-time, part-time,
And maybe it's best served in the contingency, right? And where we don't develop it.
Well, I
currently.
think, I think it allows us to set money aside and give us time to actually develop policy and develop
Yes.
ideas.
Yes.
Because we don't have much time for that.
A place.
Yeah.
It's something
At the
to
kitty
think
table.
about, Lori.
750 per
Well,
person to think about.
No, it's not on my list. It's not possible to be on my list. No, it's not. And I've got a
You don't want a free
clear
bite?
boundaries in my work now. No, I'm not kidding. I have it on the list for the human resource person and actually went to check because it's given put it on the list for the human resource person. It was already there. So, looking into wellness incentives is a big thing. Employee handbook. We talk about, we need policies. We need policies. We need to redo the employee handbook. There's a lot of work still to be done. Thanks, guys. Good night. Yeah, it's the bandwidth, I think that there's not, I'm not really pass my.
Espresso maker. Legislative sessions.
Yeah.
That's improvement, right?
Only if you want to stay up all night.
So I felt like it was probably
Wait,
not
wait.
the right time to
Wait.
bring up.
We're still,
We're still in my meeting.
I felt it was not the right time to bring up the idea of an IGA for law enforcement sharing.
Yeah.
But that's
That
still
would have
out
been
there.
brilliant.
But we still need just to put something else on the list. I agree.
well, the interesting thing is we've had an accommodations tax IGA that we're working on. We have a lot of IGAs we're working on. There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot,
I'd
there's
like to redo our building department IGA.
so many IGAs.
So many.
We have a long list. Okay.
5.1 if you back up.
Okay, so are we, Max did
It's
a,
big.
Councilmember Forgensi did a nice summary of everything. I was taking notes and I think you captured everything that was in my notes as well. I guess, but we were waiting for the hanging, the last pop-up you had
No,
with
that
the
was the
incentives.
one.
Okay, gotcha, okay, I got that. Okay,
I was going through my thing, going through the one that I missed, and that was the one that I didn't circle.
so is this the last call, Mayor? The last call for any further discussion?
I asked,
Well, I guess, so that's, we want to talk about the plan going forward. So tonight was, doing the last, getting this in this kind of shape. Getting this, and we appreciate it. And I want to publicly thank Donna because Donna has done so much work on this to get us to this.
oh, yeah.
Space.
Been fantastic.
Your budgets are, they just are,
Makes some.
now that I've had a
Nice
chance to deal with other budgets.
You spoil us.
Yeah, at least you make it easy.
Government, federal government doesn't have.
I want to say before we go that it's been expressed in the board Jesus, I can't even remember, the RHA, the Regional Housing Authority, that the county has expressed that they feel like they've been carrying the weight of housing. I personally disagree. I think we've done a great job at city level doing housing, but financially speaking and policy wise speaking, that is how they feel. I, again, have my own personal disagreement with that, but just wanted to present that to you in the budget time as a consideration for the future. I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea to have some budget set aside for housing, but I don't think we have the time.
But we
for that.
don't even know what that means. And we already pay 2/3 of the housing authority directors.
I agree with you.
You know,
I'm
not sure where they're coming from, but any cost of housing is complete unknown.
right, and we already have housing being developed. I just wanted to make sure that that was expressed in a public meeting.
Yeah,
So that it's not left and, oh, well, they never do anything about it or talk about it.
we're, at this point, we're the only ones who are gonna build the first housing. You know, if you wanna look at it that way.
You know, I have similar sentiments,
And
but
everything else is kind of pie in the sky right this minute.
it just wanted to let you all know that that's where they stand.
I think,
And we're
you
getting a
know,
lot of that from them, aren't we?
we may have approached it differently. I mean, and we've got the Laura parcel, Chiefy Housing Trust is working on that. But they're, you know, I think we've got 809 Spruce.
Yeah.
We contributed, we made the financial contribution asked of us to the Regional Housing Authority and to the Regional Housing Director's salary. I think we've done a lot. We are, I think we are, what do you call it? Hitting above our weight with the amount of people and staff that we have and the bandwidth that we have.
I would agree.
You all are not full-time employees. You do this, I think, basically as a gift.
Like tonight.
The last 2 years,
But
maybe.
I do think, I do think we've done a lot, so
Look,
I would agree with you.
I agree. I just wanted to let it be known, so it's not one of those, oh, well, they don't even talk about it things. I'm in the same field.
Did I see?
Oh, wait, stop, time out. Max just asked about the Christmas party. We just finalized it today. So thank you for asking. December the 15th is going to be a Thursday. We're going to go to the Silver Dollar. We're going to have heavy hors d'oeuvres, 2 drink tickets per person. We'll have, you know, Christmas cards like we do every year with Safeway cards in them. And then we're going to have, we've actually decided on 2 employees of the year. I think last year we did 3, but we're going to do 2.
No, just, he's terrible with this. Do not spill the beans.
No, good.
Oh, I'm not telling who it is.
Okay.
Oh, heavens no.
What time does it start on 15th?
Huh?
What time?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6
We'll be sitting, huh? Oh, shit. Although we gotta change it.
But I think that we just got the one that was from you and Kayla for the. Isn't that it?
Is there another one?
It starts at 4:30.
Oh, that's a Lake County Community Fund.
Yeah, that's a winter.
It's,
What's it called, like winter party or?
that was actually a donor appreciation gathering. It's just at Tree Line
Yeah,
at 4:30. So,
Okay.
yeah.
that's what I figured.
Same day,
I got the same.
What's that?
the same date.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have 2 events.
Hey, fun day.
And one is can.
All right, so we're, our mayor, are we adjourned?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, did I understand that the Laura thing on Thursday is canceled?
Yeah, that came from Reed.
So-
which seemed
Right,
weird.
that's why I'm questioning it.
Yeah.
It is canceled.
It is canceled, okay.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was wondering that.
Are we adjourned?
we are adjourned.
9:58.
It's,